said that we couldn't work more than like 3 days a week or more than 4 hours a shift during that school week. It was, and I always said, you know, I had to have to take the school and show it to them and have them sign off.
You know, I don't know, because since we don't employ kids,
Oh, for the year,
yeah, we don't do
He says no.
Oh, it's raining now.
The man. Did you?
That's what a week of the Grand Canyon will do.
Did you pack the backpack in?
I did with the kids.
Oh, nice.
We had an 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 13-year-old. 5 days hiking rim to rim to rim.
Wow. Awesome.
That's ambitious for a crowd
And you
like
carried
that.
all their stuff? Is that what
Hell no, they carried their own
I was
stuff.
going to say, did you carry them too?
Nope. The 8-year-old is the only one, because he's a small 8-year-old, had just had water. Everybody else carried their sleeping stuff, their clothes, their food, carried everything.
How many days?
5.
Wow.
Very cool.
120.
Oh, at the bottom?
Wow.
That's pretty brutal.
You got up at 3 o'clock in the morning and hiked at night.
Wow.
Played in the Bright Angel Creek all day long.
Had you done it before?
I do it during the winter usually.
So you knew what you were doing?
Yeah.
Down in there?
Yeah, but I usually do it during the winter, because during the winter, it's snow on the top, but on the bottom it's 75. Man, we got the whole town bored.
It's a big night. It's a whole crew big night. Yeah. Vacate your spot.
I'll sit down. Are you sure? Absolutely.
You guys
Did you
suck.
let them talk?
Oh, yeah.
I had an interesting conversation with George the other day.
No.
Huh?
Moving that on.
He quit.
Yeah.
He quit. I had an interesting conversation.
We'll have to have that happen.
We have to have a beer and talk about it.
Yeah. Remember, we're all on camera.
Okay. All right, so let's call to order this meeting of PROSTAC, August 16, 2017. Ron Summer and Kelly Watt are not here tonight, and we have one vacant seat, so everyone else is here. Do we have any public comment?
Hello, Chris Hansen, trustee, Town Superior. At the end of our work session on Monday, I had committed to being here and doing a full presentation with representatives from the sports stable and Impact Sports on the idea of the possibilities of building a rec center there. After the meeting, Peter and I spoke, and I think rightly so. Peter suggested not to do a presentation because the agenda is already set, and it'd be a little bit late to change it. And I think there's a lot of other things that we can do in between the time that the board gets together with PROSTAC and has a discussion. And I'd like to make a couple of recommendations. First, I wanted it to be clear to PROSTAC that this isn't something that just kind of came up Monday or last week or anything like that. This is actually something that was starting to be explored back at the beginning of April. And many of you may know that this actually, we tried to work with Impact Sports and Cornerstone about 1.5 years, 2 years ago to see if we could do something over there with them. And at the time, it just didn't work out, and the board rejected their proposal. Well, things have changed a little bit, and there's some opportunity there. So this kind of arose again after Rylan Reed had been watching a board meeting, and he was interested in the Lakeshore purchase. So he was watching that keenly, and when he saw that it wasn't really going to happen, when I was over there working out, he said, "Hey, is there opportunity that we kind of revisit this thing?" And I said, "Absolutely. What do we have?" So we kind of looked around, and I said, "I think there's some merit here." So we looked at it a little bit more. Anyway, the suggestion would be I think Sandy Pennington had said that, maybe we give this 2 months. I certainly wouldn't want to wait 2 months to revisit this. I think we need to act on it right away. But I think that at the next PROSTAC meeting in September, I would request that we schedule this to have a thorough discussion, have this as an agenda item. And in between time, I would suggest also that PROSTAC members get together with Ryland and if you haven't had the tour, take a thorough tour of not only Impact Sports, but the sports stable, the turf field, Brunelleschi's, the coffee shop, everything that's over there, and really understand what they do. Because you'll find that it isn't just an elite athlete location. I mean, all summer long, there was kids 5 years old to 14, 15 years old in summer camp there. So I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at what's going on over there and then understand the potential. And it'd be great if that could happen like in the next 2 weeks. Then that would lead up into the meeting that we would have in September to review potential plans, like concept plans and all that. And then also Patrick Hammer had a really good suggestion that in between those times, maybe over the next 30 days, you guys come up with as many questions as you have. Any questions you can come up with about what can go over there, what can't go over there, why we think that something could go there, and then let's get them answered. Let's address them. As we think about this, one of the things that I was reviewing yesterday is that the cost of this, really, really inexpensive. The estimate right now is that we could build upwards of a 40,000 square foot, just 40,000 square foot rec center with a pool for under $10,000 or $10 million. $7 to $8 million, somewhere around there.
Can I just interrupt you?
Yeah.
I thought when you were talking before it was 20,000 square feet. It was like 5,000 square feet, 4
Yep.
levels.
No, it was 7,000 square feet, 4 levels, up to 4 levels. And so it'd be 28,000 square feet. But based on, when you go over there and look at the property there, Luke Taylor's already said that we don't have to go to the pad, use just the pad. He actually would extend it out, the drop-off area. He doesn't need as much of a drop-off area, so you're gaining a lot of square footage. So you could actually have on the bottom like an 8 to 10,000 square foot, 8 to 10,000 square foot pool area, like first floor, and then build on top of that. Getting way ahead of ourselves, though. I mean, the design that could go there could be stair-stepped and make it look really nice, but you could still get upwards of 40,000 square feet or more. But not sure if more would be necessary. So anyway, it's the whole idea of this is to not be an elite athlete place. Ryland Reed, when he meets with you guys, he'll tell you that 5 to 10% of the business potential there is elite athletes. That's it. I mean, they're looking at the community. They want it to be more like a rec center, like a lakeshore type thing. So there's definitely an opportunity there. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to consider it. Any questions at all?
I think when we talk about on the agenda, we do have a recap of Monday.
Yep.
I think we'll start talking about some of those questions that you mentioned. So we'll see if we can come up with some questions tonight to give to Patrick, and then, like you said, try to work on it maybe between this and the next meeting, so we can work on proposals, staff can work on proposals.
Sure. Yep.
To look at next time.
I will add that I see on the agenda tonight that there's a discussion about a pickleball court. They've hired over there a pickleball instructor. I guess he's supposed to be one of the top in the nation from California, and so now they're doing pickleball in the gym there. That's already there, the basketball gym, which again would be part of this whole rec center deal.
I guess I have just a simple question, but I don't know if you have any schematics or concepts of what has been discussed.
We've reached out. BRS was not able to put anything together, so we reached out to Sink Homes, kind of sharing a brief vision that was chatted about between myself, Ryland, Luke Taylor, with some help from the manager.
Okay.
Very kind of space planning at this point. So we're working on having a revised with some square footage and then
But that'd be
costs
a
to come back.
of what would happen with the sports stable as a concept versus the PRS concept of a standalone rec center, right?
So staff right now is in a little bit of a unique spot because we're working on 2 processes simultaneously.
Well, yeah, that's why I was asking, because
so
there's been discussion about what happens at sports stable and what potentially could go in, and I know there was certain areas discussed, and I'm like, I don't know if there's any conceptual write-up or even
Just-
sketch type of
Yes.
So there was.
Yep.
So when this conversation first started with Rylan back in 1st of April, he actually pulled out 2 different schematics that he had done a year and a half earlier of a pool and like a therapy pool in addition on the bottom floor. That's why I got excited about this, because when we originally spoke with them 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, we were under the impression that we couldn't have a pool there. And we were under the impression we couldn't have a indoor running track. But as we find out now, all that's doable, absolutely doable.
Well, and I think even the schematics you showed me, what was that, end of June? That wasn't an 8 to 10,000 square foot pool. That was a
No.
lot smaller.
That was what I showed you was the original one that they did a year and a half.
Okay.
Since then, after speaking to Luke and knowing that we can not double the square footage, but maybe 1.5 times the square footage, you'll find that we can easily put in a 6 to 8 lane competitive pool. Luke Taylor's even saying, well, gosh, why don't we put a deep end in there also so you can do diving and that kind of thing. I wouldn't get anyone's hopes up that that's going to be a competitive diving facility. I don't think that's possible. But to have a 6 to 8 lane competitive pool, absolutely. In addition to like a little mini lazy pool or another pool that you can do swim lessons independent of what's going on in the pool, the main pool, in addition to having locker rooms that are already there. The thing that makes this appealing and that makes the cost come down so much is that everything is there. You don't have to put in any kind of infrastructure. The building's there, so you're not building a new building, you're just adding on to it. So when you look at the construction costs of that building over there, construction costs come way down. That's why it's affordable. Then you bring in the partners like Dr. Sheen and all the doctors there, Impact Sports, which are the same, but they're independent. Luke Taylor, the Brunelleschi's, the coffee house, everything like that. Everybody wants to be a part of this. Then you start saying, okay, well, maybe the town is responsible. Their share of this deal is the pool. And the pool, I think I heard a number the other night of $10 million or $8 million. No, you can do a pool there for $3 to $4 million, and that would be the biggest portion of this. So maybe the town's portion is programming the pool and paying for the pool, and then the next level up is the workout facility and the yoga rooms and all that kind of stuff. That's programmed by Impact Sports because that's what they do. They do that now, so they just program that. Everything else could be programmed by the sports stable because that's what they're good at. So, again, it's just the possibilities are almost endless with this thing. That's why it's very appealing.
I guess for me, it's if there's some schematics or something.
Yeah.
I know I have probably a lot more questions if you have some.
So this is,
Something that's been discussed.
so you guys were there, the directions were given Monday night, it's Wednesday.
Okay.
We're working on them. I've got my marching orders, so we'll get them. We'll work on the other process simultaneously. We haven't really gotten any approval to spend any more on the BRS portion of it. So I've reached out. Sink Homes is doing a conceptual design square footage. We've asked them for budget numbers. We've met with Impact to talk about what areas within the existing facility could be retroed. So, yep, we know it's fast tracked. We'll get it to you guys, and I know that we'll debrief from it. But something I think we probably need to talk about is maybe some interim meeting steps. But yeah, we're hustling. We'll get you.
I just, for us to generate questions that you've already answered or have information on is the key for me that I just don't want to.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable request. Of course, I mean, once you see some drawings, you're going to say, oh, well, what about this then? Yeah, so I totally get it. So,
Because, I can look
not
at
a
the
problem.
plan and have a lot of questions.
Okay.
How would we go about arranging the tour? Is that something we would do as a group or individually? If we were to do it between now and the next PROSTAC meeting?
How about I get Rylan in touch with Peter? I'll do an email together, include you both, do an introduction. Have you met, do you know Rylan?
Mm-mm.
I'll do an email introduction, and then you guys can figure it out and put it together.
Okay, yeah, we'll figure. I mean,
Have
I
any of
don't-
you
I
been to
don't
the sports
expect
table
that.
yet? Or how about the Impact Sports section?
I have seen parts of it.
Okay.
I haven't done the tour like this at the cafeteria and the.
Yeah. You know there's already community centers or community rooms there. There's a
Right.
conference room, and then there's a community room, the Superior community room, that's open to Superior residents now. So there's stuff happening there now that's available to us.
Okay.
Maybe I missed this one, but
fees, yeah.
So if they run the part of the impact sports tables, will they be special fees for residents or?
Well, I certainly can't, I mean, we're so early in this that I certainly can't say, oh yeah, you're going to give $50 a month for families. I don't think that that's reasonable. But one of the criteria, speaking with Ryland, is that if you want something like this to even have a chance to work with not only the committee but the board and the town, is that it's got to be less than what Lakeshore charges for sure. But we're thinking, you know, somewhere in the range of, I don't think it'd be a bad thing to be a little bit more than what Louisville charges, because it's going to be our own, and it's going to be new, and it's going to be nice. So I had thrown out a number that I said, you know, can you have a family membership, monthly membership for $80 a month? I think that's reasonable, and I think that's a good starting point. Can we get it less than that? Perhaps. Would it be more than that? Maybe. But I think that that's all part of the whole negotiating process. And I will tell you one thing that'll probably be a question that you'll think of later is parking. How in the heck are we going to support that in parking, especially when Main Street is done? Main Street will probably be done within the next 2 to 3, 4 weeks or something like that, and then the parking at the end is going to go away. So one of the things that I would encourage, if it doesn't come up, PROSTAC or the board to think about is talking to Dr. Sheen. They've got a big parking structure that's going in. If they're going to be partners in this thing, we've got to be able to have access to that parking structure, because there's going to be a lot of people that want to use this place. And we can't have them parking in the dirt and trampling mud around and all that. So those are some of the questions that we should be thinking about, is also is parking and how we're going to support what I think could be a highly demand location.
For point of reference, Lakeshore now Lifetime fees just went up.
Yeah, we had a discussion about that. Was that in Monday night? Did we discuss that briefly? And I had heard the same thing, that.
I'm a member, so I know.
Oh, well, I was told, and I don't want to start rumors or anything like that, but I was told by someone who's a member also, that is an inside person, that said, yeah, they're raising the fees. They want to attract a high level clientele, and anybody that doesn't want to pay this amount is not really worth being a client. So
it's their top level. It's going to be their Onyx level. They're redoing it. It's going to be their Onyx level. So
yeah, that's great.
It's the most elite level they have.
Is your mic on, Corbett?
This one is. This one's on.
I think.
Say what you said again.
Lakeshore, which is now Lifetime, they're revamping it. They're closing down between Labor Day and the end of the year, and it's going to be an Onyx level. So the one in Westminster is a gold level or something to that effect. This is even above that. So my fees, I know, went up, just for me personally, went up $12 a month.
Is that for a family membership or a personal membership?
That's just for a personal. When I have my wife and kids will come on and off.
Yeah.
They allow monthly for that. But for me, I went from roughly $80 to $100.
Yeah.
Or 80 something to 100.
I was going to even say that it's not even worth knowing what you're paying with the family, because I know it's going to be much more than we want something over here to be, or on Richmond 15 or wherever it might be. If we're doing something on our own as a town, and it's going to be in town, it's got to be attractive to most people here in Superior. So, anything else?
I think for now we're
good.
Well, good.
We're good.
Good.
I wasn't planning on sticking around the whole night, but I will stick around for the next discussion item just in case. But then I'll quietly walk out after that. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Chris.
Sandy Pennington, Mayor Pro Tem. Just so my comments at the end of the work session are accurately characterized, I actually asked for an intensive effort for the next 2 months on this particular idea, so that your broader issues and your broader recommendations of what to do about rec and community center are not put on hold while we drag this analysis out. So I fully support a very intensive effort. And I am fully aware that for a advisory committee who meets on a scheduled basis once a month, really kickstarting this in 2 months is a big ask, but I'm fully in support of sort of the essence of what Chris just outlined, which is an intensive effort up front to see whether or not this effort the opportunity at Sports Stable is something that should be considered seriously or not. So an intensive effort up front to look at all those variables and advise the board as to whether or not this is, how we will how you would recommend we look at it within the context of the broader picture, because obviously you've spent 3 or 4 or 5 years on this now, and we do not want to get it off track. So I am asking for an intensive 2-month effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy. All right, so if we don't have any more public comment, we'll move on to the first discussion item. So this is just kind of a recap of PROSTAC's work session with the board this past Monday, August 14th. I guess 4 of the 6 were here, or were there. So Corbett and Narita, did you get to watch it or listen to it at all?
I've read the summary.
Okay. So, you know, the 5 to 7 work session, that was to discuss PROSTAC's recommendation from June for, you know, asking the board whether or not they were interested in moving forward with, you know, a rec center ballot question essentially, and the aside of that was the budget request for next year of $100,000 to work on that. I'm trying to think of like there was no decision reached, I guess, let's say that. So part of it is what came out of that meeting is what Chris and Sandy just spoke to, which is to evaluate whether or not the opportunity over at Impact Sports and Sports Stable is a viable option. And then, you know, part of it is the same kind of concerns for a standalone like community rec center that have been expressed before. Would residents, would voters approve it? What is it actually going to cost? What is the ongoing maintenance fees? All these questions that really we would need that, you know, staff would need that $100,000 to get the proper consultants to answer a lot of those questions, as well as just setting up the time for staff, the board, PROSTAC to work on it. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where once the board commits, there's going to be a whole timeline involved, but we're not going to enter that timeline until there's a commitment to that's a serious consideration, that there's going to be a ballot question, whether it's next year or the following year. So right now, we'll look at this Impact Sports proposal, see if it can go anywhere. At the same time, we won't, you know, like Sandy said, we won't put it in the back burner what we've been doing with the ballot question either. I mean, if there's something we think we need to do with that, I think we'll continue to work on it. Though right now it's pretty neatly summed up, I think. Like I said, to get any further with that is going to require the approval of our budget request for next year. If anyone else that was there thinks I left anything out.
The only other thing I'd add on is that just the continued understanding of what we think a rec center should have and what those priorities are for the community to have in a rec center, and how that can roll into the sports stable or into a standalone. And also, I think the one piece that was also brought up a few times was the other indoor space and analysis that was for the town center indoor space requirements. So when we talked about leaving things out of the rec center for the indoor space because of the other proposals, you know, how does all that work together? So I think it's, you know, trying to make a mesh of all those pieces and make sure that we're covering what's needed for the community in one package.
Right.
And so there's an understanding as we take it to, even if you take it to a vote on, say, the sports stable or Richmond 15, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, but you have to really make sure there's an understanding of the community of space that may be done in town center for open, not seniors, but teens or breakout spaces, community spaces,
Well, yeah,
library.
that would be
things like
more,
that
that would be more community amenities, library, teen space, classrooms, meeting rooms, that type of thing.
But those things were left out of the rec center intentionally, so we just now got to make sure. And, you know, is there a way to blend them all together? Is it a good opportunity to utilize the sports stable and an expansion of that to capture all those pieces in one area and maybe have another facility nearby that has the remaining of them? So just things to think about.
For what Chris said, it seems like some of those rooms might already be there, no? The meeting rooms, so we may find out in our tour.
Yeah, I mean, there is I don't know how many people that meeting room is in
The
sports stable, like
the
30?
town's community room. When we did the meeting with Mayor Folsom and Town Manager Magley, we had close to, I think we were just shy of 80.
Oh, really?
And then there's a 12-person conference room adjacent to that, and then I would say with over the last probably 4 months, a classroom style area that could probably fit 20 to 25. But the biggest room for sure is that 80. You know, 80 was it was kind of meeting style seating like this, but it was
Yeah, and
it
it
fit.
is
And we had a presentation area up
one
front.
room. Yeah, it's not, what we had talked about for the potential in a rec center would have been something, like we said, 160 person dividable meeting room with a warming kitchen. So it would be like more of an event space that could be divided up. So, that's some of what we'll have to get into when we look at the impact sports table. It's like, what can it have? What can it have? And comparing that to what we've recommended after looking at the survey, after listening to, kind of compiling all the feedback we've heard for years now. That's the one thing we'll have to do is kind of look at the, what would be left out, I guess. And then what would be gained too, because obviously a partnership with Impact Sports and Sports Stable would have the potential for access to like the ice and the fields and stuff that we obviously would not have in a standalone town facility. So those will have to be weighed against each other. So, I mean, we definitely have a little bit of time that we can dedicate now just to kind of give staff a list of questions that we might have regarding the Impact Sports Stable idea. So some of us that were there on Monday might have already thought of some questions. Others of us might not have. So I don't know, I would just maybe go down one by one. If you can just think of questions where you had time to write them down or just off the top of your head, and staff can record them. We don't have to discuss the questions right now. We just need to pose the questions. So I don't know who wants to start.
Sure, I can start. I do think it's important to take a deep dive on this option to include cost differences. So we really understand, the cost of building, a pool in the town center area versus standalone facility and that sort of thing, because I think that makes a big difference. And also, I think it's important to make an apples to apples comparison. So, if we decide, or if we're thinking about, the opportunity to build 5 amenities within town center, how much would those 5 amenities cost with a standalone option? So we can understand, an apples to apples comparison, because the standalone community center, of course, has many amenities, which is one of the reasons why the cost is higher. So if we're looking at half the amenities, is that half the cost, or is it, much less than that? So I think that's where you can do an apples to apples value comparison when you look at, okay, 5 amenities in the town center, 5 amenities standalone. What's the apples to apples cost there? So to me, that's a question that comes to mind. So, and I also would like to know, in terms of the actual, features and amenities, what the options are within the sports stable complex versus a standalone complex. Are we able to, build out 100% of our options there, or 50% of our options? So we understand essentially the compromises that are being made.
Maria, can you think of anything?
I definitely think that we need to examine this very carefully, and I think from my perspective, seems like a very good opportunity. Mainly cost, and I'm sure there is some trade-offs that we need to make, and maybe we don't get exactly, I don't know, it may be the 160 people room versus an 80 people room, or maybe, I don't know, we get 2 gyms and something else that we don't. But definitely, when I look at the numbers that you sent by email, I thought it was a lot of money to build a standalone rec center. So I don't know what the people of Superior might think, but probably when they see what they have to pay for having the ideal place, they may reconsider if they can live without something. But so anyway, I don't know. I don't have particular questions. I think when we go and tour it and then we compare with what we have spoken about, maybe I may have more questions. But
Right, yeah, we'll have plenty of time to come up with more questions. This is just a first pass. Corey?
I got 5 minutes now.
Don't get me started.
I think it's a great opportunity and a good problem for the town to have 2 potentially great places, because I think that there's the Richmond 15 from a master planning standpoint. If you look at the overall community and where things are, Williams Field, the baseball diamonds, the West Fields, the basketball court, everything is in that kind of spline. And if you put the rec center just before the Colton Trailhead and the open outdoor space, you have a great recreation kind of thoroughfare right there in the community. I think if you put it into downtown here in the new town center, the sports stable is a great facility, and I hope that we can build a great community around it. So I think both options are great, and it's just a matter of what am I getting the best out of, because a standalone facility, we can put in everything we need, hopefully, but there's a cost to it. Where the sports stable, there may be some compromise, but you may get other benefits that you wouldn't originally intend to put in, and they're going to cost potentially less, and operation maybe less. So there's that private-public partnership that, there's a little offset in how much every resident pays compared to that business and how the business works already, and their staff and things like that. So for me, a lot of it comes down to, with the sports stable, because it's already been constructed and there's a lot of town development around there and the roads and everything else, it really comes into, for me looking at it, the facility to the north is tight. There's a drainage area on the backside, small parking around it. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of extra space around the sports stable other than right in the front. So where is that extra space that we can add on to, and how much do we really get? But I'm sure there's creative ways and opportunities there, and if there's already been some concepts and ideas thrown out there, I'd love to see that and just, enlighten us about the opportunities that are there. So not really any questions right there, but more just comments and ideas. So I'm sure I could keep going, but I'll stop.
All right. All right, so,
Well, you got to go around the rest of the table.
well, we're going in a row. All right, Susan.
Go first.
No, Susan, go ahead.
The head chief goes
I'll
last.
go.
That's right.
I guess I would just add, in addition to the exploration of the different amenities and kind of weighing them one possibility versus another, what comes to my mind a little bit is curiosity about the financial arrangements and the agreement between the private-public partnership. How much of a sense do we have yet of what that would really mean from a revenue sharing perspective and from a legal perspective? And I understand there's tons of details that would yet need to be worked out, but I'd be curious to know if there are similar agreements that have been done in the area that people could point to kind of understand, what's the relative, perhaps economic risk, legal risk, just so we begin to get a sense of what we might be getting into from that regard. That's all.
All right, I'm going to take more than 5 minutes. You're going to dedicate your time to the respectful person on the left. So, you know, in my world, I do a lot of procuring of hardware for our spaceship, and there's typically 3 types that we do. We make a make-buy decision, right? Do we make it or do we buy it? And if you buy it, do you buy something that's already built, or do you buy something that's built that you're modifying? So in this, where we are today is actually a pretty good scenario, because we have some information, which you were asking for, that we had earlier, about making something from scratch, right? We have information on what it costs to buy something that's already made. We have all the Lakeshore information that we can do a comparison to. Now we have the third option, which is you buy something, but you're modifying what you're buying, because something's already there, you're just adding to what they already have. So it gives you the best opportunity to really evaluate all the assessments, and then you start doing your cost versus what am I giving up assessments. What am I really getting for my dollar versus what am I giving up because I'm saving money, and is it worth it in the end, or do I ultimately, you know, because you're not having to pay the electrical, you're not having, you know, infrastructure, you're not having to pay the sewage infrastructure, you're not having to pay all these things that are there. But what are you giving up because you don't have unlimited free reign to do anything you want to do? The other piece of it that you were talking about, the legal, again, you know, in my world, it's intellectual property, but something similar. They typically own the building. If we add onto the building, what does that mean for building ownership? What if that goes under? What happens to our part of the building, or any you know, thousands of scenarios of what could happen to that building, or what happens to our edge of it if we add onto it. It's something to consider when you're considering all that. But so, you know, my questions would be more of as much data as we could get, you know, to be able to compare the Lakeshore versus a scratch versus at least what we could do there, how do we build it up, what areas, and then start looking at what kind of amenities to really be able to do some kind of assessment on where's your bang for your buck.
Is that it?
I'll keep going. I can
All right.
filibuster all day.
So my initial 2 big questions, which I mentioned this to Chris the other night, I kind of think you need to get these 2 questions answered before it makes sense to even put a lot of effort into everything else. Is one is the idea of that TIF money from Town Center could pay for this. You wouldn't have to go to a ballot to fund it. Well, how much TIF is actually available? This seems to be a debatable question amongst the board members over and over again. So how much of the TIF money is actually available? When is that TIF money available? Because I've heard that, you know, that the developer is not, you know, like with the parks and stuff, it could be years before they do another bond issue that's going to cover that TIF money. So how much is available? When's the TIF money available? If you spend, you know, 6 or 10 million on this out of TIF, well, how are you paying for the parks in Town Center? And if, you know, say it's determined you only have 6 million that you can spend out of TIF, and it's going to cost that 6 million to build these rec center amenities, how do those community center amenities that have been discussed for Town Center, the library, the teen space, like, you know, everything that we've already discussed, how do those then get built? Basically, is there enough money to go around to fund everything that needs to be funded, or is this going to have to go to a ballot anyway, just like a standalone rec center would have to do? And then the second primary question I see is the pool size. You know, what we've seen that as one of the, I don't want to say main reasons why you need the indoor rec center, but it's like if the north pool was considered adequate and we just put a bubble over that, then we wouldn't even necessarily have to have the rec center question. Well, we've gotten past that. We've said, no, it's you would need a more modern pool, a bigger pool. And so if it's determined that in this space at this Impact Sports Stable, you can only get a pool that's, as big or maybe even smaller than the North Pool, I think that's a pretty definitive answer right there. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So those two things are primaries. I have a bunch of other questions, kind of along what Corbett said. Who owns the land? Does the town have to buy the land? And then who owns the building? If the town does own the land, but both sides of the partnership are paying for the building, who actually owns the building? And then what happens if Impact Sports and/or Sports Stable is sold or closes? From a legal standpoint, what happens there? Does the town have, maintain the building in perpetuity even if another ownership comes in and doesn't have any interest in the partnership? That's a big one. Then what several of you said, what amenities can fit from the PROSTAC list? A kind of what can we compromise? And then from the standpoint of what we might gain, you have shared spaces, the fields, the ice. How much time and what days of a week and times of a day would the town be able to use and schedule the ice and the indoor fields compared to Sports Table Impact Sports using that space? Who gets priority over shared spaces? Like if the Impact Sports already has the gymnasium and the workout equipment, are we talking about everyone's equal? The memberships through the town are the same as memberships through Impact Sports and it's all shared? Or is there a priority over, Impact Sports or teams using that space over town residents? Are Impact Sports and Sports Table contributing any money to the construction costs? Or is that all town of Superior? I would say for right now that's parking, like Chris said. Is there going to be sufficient parking with the anticipated number of memberships that would be gained through this facility? And then one other one would be how many floors can the building actually have? I know it's been said 4, but I think it was Trustee Dozell raised the question of whether the town center building height restrictions would actually accommodate 4 levels. And so that actually has a big play into how many square feet you can get out of the facility, is how many floors, how many square feet could we actually get in that building. So that's what I got for now.
All right, so if I want to make sure as we kind of work through the process, if you guys are, I thought I'd like to kind of read the questions, or at least what I captured, back to you guys. As I was kind of listening to it, I heard a handful of questions that are probably board related, so I'll probably try to classify those as kind of board related. And then I think we've got some good questions that we could prompt Impact Sports with. If you guys are okay with it, and we do get to the next step where we set up a meeting with Impact, I'd like to, with your blessing, submit the questions so they kind of mull over answers. So when we do get to the point of meeting with them, we're not wasting time kind of reiterating this step. Does that sound like a doable plan?
Yes.
So jump in at any point, and then we could do this a couple different ways, because I think as staff we have some questions too. I know I'll get questions to reiterate on behalf of the board as well as on behalf of the town manager. So I'll start just kind of generally, and you guys know how we do it. Some of this now for note taking will be paraphrasing, kind of like what we did with Lakeshore. We'll clean them up, shoot them back to you. We can look at verbiage and content, but in a pretty quick timeline. So starting with Jacques, want to find an apples to comparison for amenity cost. If we are to build half of the amenities at the Richmond site, would that also correlate with the half the cost? I think that's a great question. A couple of times on what are the compromises going to be on kind of the dream facility that you guys came up with in the recommendation if we were to build it, impact. Couple of comments about what is the total space that's available. What does the public-private partnership look like from a legal and revenue sharing process? I think it's completely, we might as well get that ball rolling if we've got 2 months to kind of dig into this. I've got that actually as a separate question. We can lump it all together. What happens to the building ownership? Who owns what, and how does the partnership actually operate? Corbett, I think you and Peter both had some good points about, what happens if Sports Stable goes away and Impact goes away. I may try to play around with that question a little bit just because I'm not sure that they'll actually, I don't know what, it's a good question to ask. I don't know what kind of response we'll get. Or if that's something that we let the board have a dialogue on, but at least letting the board know that we want to know.
I think it's definitely, it's a legal question.
Yeah, that's
It-
Right.
Questions
Yeah.
of that.
So we'll,
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's not meant to be an insult to Sports Stable or Impact.
No, I
that
just
to
don't-
suggest that they might fail.
yeah, because
It's
the answer you're going to get from them is we're going to be here and we're going to be here forever.
right.
So I think as we kind of look at dividing those up, that'll probably fall into the board category. Can the TIF pay for this? How much of the TIF is available, and when will we have access to the funds? Is there enough TIF funding to cover this, and what would the impacts be for the construction cost on Parks 1 and 2?
and the
library.
a separate community center, community space, civics. You can just say civic space.
Who owns the land? Who owns the building? What does the priority use look like for other amenities within the building? What will the Sports Stable and or Impact contribute, if any, to the construction cost? How many floors can be built? How much actual square footage can we get? And then I think completely appropriate to talk to them about timing. I think from the minimal conversation I've had with those guys over the last day or two, I think that they view this as a very small window. I don't think there's a whole lot of appetite on their end once Main Street's built out and businesses are going in to remobilize construction over there. So I think that that's probably something that needs to be out there. I think operational cost, I think understanding the programmatic piece of what they're willing to contribute, I do think it makes sense to understand the difference between, I think what the perception is a very competitive facility, so digging out maybe some of the recreational uses. And a lot of these we actually had on the FAQ sheet that we put together for Lakeshore. And then I think price point on membership. So any ads from the committee, and then
Parking question.
oh, I do have parking in there.
And I would say part of that would be, can any proposed parking garages at this point be added to, if necessary?
And when we're talking about parking, are we talking about where?
Where
So the
and
questions that I had is
where
where
and how
who-
much?
and who pays?
Well, yeah, and if additional parking needs to be added, who pays?
Okay.
Patrick, a couple that were mentioned
Do you-
that I'm not sure.
So
you
open
captured.
it back up as public
Was
comment really
constraints on
quickly.
pool,
Oh, right, yeah.
did we get that, and, just
Can-
physical.
Can a pool
constraints,
fit?
right? And then, Peter's question on preference of clients and teams versus.
That's priority.
Timing of-
Priority.
Yeah,
timing.
you-
Who's the
scheduling.
priority usage?
Priority usage.
I think we had that one in there.
Patrick had priority usage. I think I went a little more detailed than he wrote down, but he had it.
Along with that priority usage, though, a good question to ask is, do they perceive that there's potentially any conflict between their elite clients sharing space with non-elite clients, right? You come in there and you're used to having facility to yourself to train however you want as an elite client. Now you're sharing the space and you have to get in line to go hit whatever pieces of equipment, you may lose elite clients.
Well, and that was kind of my question is, like if a team if a team needs to use like the equipment, the workout equipment at Impact Sports, does that mean that it's then off limits to all other clients? Like, are they basically going to be blocking out? I mean, obviously the ice and the fields, that's just going to be programmed, blocked out in periods. But yeah, are other shared amenities that would be more commonly used by, like the gymnasium, the workout room, like say, I don't know what they have in the way of like yoga fitness studios. Is that stuff also going to be blocked out? Are there basically going to be chunks of a day where if I walked in, they would say, sorry, you can't work out right now?
Well, and I can see that happen. I've seen that in other gyms where they've rented it out to teams. And they say the team is training from this hour to this hour, and it's just team training in that hour because they have to be able to get all their training in, and they can't get it in during that time if it's shared space. Right.
Right.
I have seen that in other facilities.
If I may, that's a good question, but it's two totally separate areas. The elite athlete area is downstairs.
Okay.
So I had chatted about this just briefly with Matt, knowing that so I want to make sure that I'm capturing what are board comments, so we can capture that, and then what are captured as committee comments. So.
And I think, Chris, I think we can get a better understanding of that when we tour it. I mean, I did the town tour, initially, that was organized by a town, but done by like just the desk person at Sports Stable. I don't remember it. I don't think they showed us enough like what space was exclusively for like elite clients teams. So I think when we do a tour, we can get a better understanding of that.
Right. How long do we have to submit questions? Can we submit them through the end of the week if we think of
Keep
more?
coming up with them.
Okay,
I
good.
mean, if we kind of looking back on that Lakeshore process, I think here we've got a 2-month window. We had 6 weeks, I think, when we did that one. We spent maybe a week and a half really trying to refine the questions.
Yeah, this is just a first opportunity
Right.
to ask.
A friend of mine, he's a facility manager over at CU's new fitness facility.
Mhm.
And I'd like to pick his brain on
Yep.
what should we be asking?
Yeah.
What should we be thinking about in this? Just to make sure, the unknown unknowns, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So I would say maybe into next week. Does that work for an initial set of questions?
Right. And I would just say if we can try to set up a tour before then.
Before the end of next week?
Yeah, so that if those of us who can tour it have an opportunity to come up with questions from that experience.
So do we want to do the initial set of questions so we're not reliving these questions, maybe the end of this week? Get them a first kind of blush at it. That way those who do the tour can expect some answers initially. And then I think it's an open-ended process of asking them questions.
Spiral process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Like it.
I'd like to suggest two process things. Patrick, if you could go take these back to Matt. We trustees have been on the same tour Peter's been on. So the trustees need an additional tour as well. So would we go with PROSTAC, which is what I think we should do, or whatever. So trustees.
And I actually,
tour as well.
I like that idea because
huh?
I like that idea because when PROSTAC had an opportunity to go on the rec center tours with the trustees, I felt like that was very useful.
And then the other thing is, when Congress, because of how intensive this analysis is and front-loaded, I would suggest that at least the chair of this committee be at the table to learn and listen as often as possible when conversations are being had with staff and between staff and folks, whoever else is around the table, so that you're not just reported back to once a month, that you're an active participant in those meetings. So that's my suggestion to take to Matt and Steve.
Okay.
So maybe that's you and I just kind of coordinate daytime schedules,
Yeah.
kind of like what we've done on skate park, and we can do it that way.
Okay. So are we good, Patrick, to move on?
Can I ask one more question added to that, about the operation cost? Just what would be town's exposure to operation costs compared to what it is on the facility?
So while Patrick finishes up typing, I think we'll move on to the next discussion item, the explore ongoing bike park maintenance and programming opportunities within the town. I have to apologize that I've been so out of the loop on these community bike rides. Where do we stand with those? Did anything happen between the last meeting and this one?
Yes, thanks to Jock. I'll start and I'll let you fill in all the details. So the end of July, we had scheduled the Coyote Ridge trail maintenance and the social ride. The trail maintenance happened and Jock led it for us, and they had a much better turnout than we had for the BMX park. It looked like they got a lot of work done.
Good.
The Sonny from VeloStop decided that the next day we would not hold the community ride. That was just because there was so much work had actually got done in the trail. He wanted a little bit more rain to come on and actually pack that in, because more work was done than we thought was going to get done, I guess. And so the trail needed a little bit of time to settle and had some rain before we rode on it. So the trail maintenance was a success. The ride has to be rescheduled. And then we have one more ride that we were going to do, which is the kind of ice cream social, and get people to experience how to get to the 36 bikeway. And so we still got to schedule that. There's lots of things going on with the eclipse and whatnot, so we'll try to get that scheduled for later this month, beginning of September.
Okay.
You want to fill in the details? Use the same today because I had to be out of town.
Yeah, no, you totally captured it. There were a few questions in the beginning, around like how exactly to do the trail maintenance and that sort of thing. So I may have dropped the ball a little bit on that, but you're right. In the end, everyone got together. We did a lot of great work, with respect to not biking the next day, the reason why that came up is because some of the dirt, there was a lot of digging done in some sections of the trail. And so next time around, maybe we can have a discussion before the maintenance day, just kind of discuss how we should be doing the maintenance. Because there were instructions provided, which was great. There were pictures and instructions, but I guess there were still some questions about how exactly to do the digging.
Of opinions and how
exactly.
to execute those instructions.
Right, exactly. So just a little more detail on instructions, but otherwise, yeah, I think the turnout was pretty good.
But I would, we take these lessons learned and apply
Yep.
them next year. I think we could do the same thing and get even more involvement. But the
Right.
key was from the BMX trail maintenance to the Coyote Ridge trail maintenance. We had a lot more spamming of the community, and we went from we basically over tripled the number of folks who showed up. So that was a much better deal because it's a bigger area.
Yep, very cool. Yep. And since I was the one on the PROSTAC committee, people were looking to me for answers. So next time I have to be a professional trail. I have to have a lot of professional trail knowledge, right?
Yeah, I don't know. When Corey and I did it last year, I think it was the same.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it was kind of looked to us, and it's like we didn't really know specifically how some of the maintenance should have been done. We just kind of used our best judgment.
Right. Yeah. And that's what everyone did. So overall, yeah, I think it was a great effort, and turnout was good.
Okay.
I did get a request, Patrick, from VeloStop. So was it Taylor? I think he's one of their mechanics, and he's their BMX specialist. He's over at that BMX park all the time. He's always trying to clean it up. He requested if you may have the combination to the tools over there.
Absolutely.
And he said that he would, he would keep it clean and keep it in good shape Because he's over there all the time, and he has to bring his own stuff right now.
Yeah, in the lock, absolutely.
Oh yeah, the tools that were provided, super useful. That was fantastic. Shovels and rakes, so
Yeah.
everyone used the tools. I left the tools that I brought in the car because there were plenty of tools provided, so that was
Like it.
awesome. Thank you.
How would you like to get him the combo? I mean, I still have it in the old email. I could give it to him, or
Do
do you guys
you?
want to officially do it from the city? It's up-
No, if you have it.
I still have it.
I'd just go
Okay.
look at our combo list and get it to you.
I'll give it to him and
anyway.
just say that you guys give your blessing.
And I'd mentioned at one point, I think to Sonny too, that we'd give him access to it as well. So I like it.
He did a good job of keeping it clean, keeping all the small rocks off.
Pick his brain
One-
about maybe some ways to tweak it and modify it and maybe kick it out a little bit to the east.
It's interesting. He's a really good kid. He's a 15-year-old kid who lives in the community. He walked up to Sonny one day and knocked on the door and said, "I would like to work here."
Love it. Yeah, those are the kind of kids we need down there to advocate for it.
Well, and that kind of leads right into the point of this discussion item. I mean, ongoing maintenance at the bike park and programming of it. Were there any specific, because Patrick, you added this to the agenda, so were there any specifics that you had? Or was this a work plan
This
item?
was a work plan
Okay, it
item.
was.
And I was kind of digging back through, and I think that there's always been a collective interest to do probably more maintenance or a greater level of maintenance that's over there. We went and we asked the board for an additional $10,000 to kind of maintain that entire area. I think you guys have heard me say we don't necessarily have a bike park expert. It just gets juggled in amongst the other items that we have to deal with. So is there something that we want to try to spearhead here for something more consistent or more scheduled or make it a thing out of it? I think was really kind of the purpose of the original goal, the
I
original
think
item.
now that there is, they're not full-time like before, but they're part-time, but there is a volunteer coordinator
Mhm.
within the town. If somehow this couldn't be added to their list of regularly scheduled volunteer opportunities, so, whatever it is, every April, May, this happens without us having to think about it again, on an annual basis, us like PROSTAC having to go to staff and asking that this be scheduled, or staff for that matter, even having to remember. If the volunteer coordinator could have like a list, I'm sure there's other events that they're always on an annual basis working on. If we could at least have one a year, if not two, or even three, one a season minus winter, I think that would be great.
I like it. We also,
From a programming standpoint, I don't know, that's a different question that I don't think we've really addressed before, but from a maintenance
Yeah.
standpoint, if that could be a regularly scheduled item.
We also had just kind of an internal conversation myself with Matt Rarick and Tommy, who are out in the field, and I do think there is an opportunity to leverage or use our relationship with Boulder County Youth Corps. There's no shortage of projects for those guys, but is there any interest or any desire for a summer or for 2 summers or for a couple of summers to say, we want the youth corps from start to finish over however many weeks to work on bike parks or trail maintenance on Coyote Ridge? We briefly kind of looked at a couple of grant opportunities. So just another idea that we've been tossing around the office is, instead of kind of having youth corps bounce from project to project to project, scraping benches or replacing trash cans or cutting down trees, is, do we have those guys spend an entire summer revamping per a plan, whether it's somebody that or we go out and we have somebody for a couple $1,000 come up with a plan. Is it time to revamp it, and we'd have the manpower taken care of. So
I'm also even wondering from a volunteer standpoint, is there a way, I'm so long removed from Boy Scouts, but is there like there's got to be enough troops around here between Cub Scouts and Boy Scouts. Is there a badge that something like this
Volunteer.
could play into, that we could get like one troop a year to do something like this, and that would guarantee you a certain number of heads,
Mhm.
you know, working on, you know, sets of hands working on it. Just a thought.
I can, so, my kid's a Cub Scout, and his den leader lives right next to me, and we're friends with the pack leader, so I can ask them and say, because we're just now, Cub Scouts is just now ramping back up for the year. They pretty much take the summer off and they ramp back up. So I'll ask them if there's any, you know, they do lots of volunteer stuff already. They help with Earth Day and things like that. Or if there's a badge that, because they start planning their year now
Right.
of the different activities they want to do. So we want to get it on as soon as possible if it was.
Their earth moving badge. I don't know.
You know, something else that we had briefly just chatted about with Kevin Clone, who's our volunteer coordinator, is at any point do we try to find somebody interior to the community who's got the engineering skills maybe to come up with a drawing? You know, whether that's Sonny or, you know, somebody else that we know in town. I mean, it's a town full of engineers because we get reminded of that by them all the time. But, you know, is there another volunteer, a bigger picture volunteer opportunity? So if you guys are knowing anybody, or if you think that that idea has any merit that we want to track down, because we have started to hear that, you know, after a certain number of years that the layout's just stagnant. Or, you know, so give that some thought as well.
You were talking like Coyote Ridge, or are you talking the BMX park?
Pump track.
Okay.
Either. My
Because Coyote
opinion.
Ridge, I think the message we got from the community was,
Yeah.
don't touch it. You know,
Yep.
clean it up from the damage, but don't touch it.
But don't touch it. I think
Keep it a single track.
what we've talked to it is more in terms of redoing the pump track.
Okay, yeah.
You know, I actually just had a thought on Coyote Ridge. I mean, shift gears here. When we tried to close off those couple areas for restoration, the seed didn't take. I mean, the fences kind of blew down, whatever. It's been so wet lately. I'm wondering if now wouldn't be a good time to try to put the seed back down in those couple places, unless Jacques, you did it when you did the maintenance.
No, we didn't have any seed. We focused
Okay.
on digging out the trails and things. But just one thing to add to that, I think last year when it was done, there was a big, because I was out walking my dogs in the trail system, there's a big windstorm.
And all that hay
the
blew
next
away.
day, yeah, it was pretty much everywhere. So I would say, yes, it's a good point on the rain because it's muddier, so the seeds should stick. But I would add to that we might want to think about maybe adding some type of netting on top of it, which would
Yeah.
also, I think, help prevent people from walking on those areas.
Right,
Right.
yeah. And right now with all the rain, I noticed less people walking in those areas
But-
in general,
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they still walk on it, right?
right. But for sure, if it's like a dry dirt path with and you just put seed on it, it's a good idea. But it's not just doesn't stick.
Right. Well, yeah, and also, I mean, it's just not going to grow if it doesn't have any water. The seed's not going to, Just a thought. I mean, because what I've heard is we're not going to have another heat wave this year. It's supposed to stay cool and fairly wet
But
from here on out.
yeah. But another question is, how successful do you think we could be, basically going against the social trails? We're trying to
Population control.
trying to cover up a social trail.
They
right?
weren't really. It was only really a couple. Like we had rerouted one trail, and so it was just trying to make sure no one went on not the original. Actually, the reroute was the original on the kind of cut off shortcut. And then there was another one that kind of went down into the pond,
Mhm.
social trail. So that one we worked, but in general, we weren't actually trying to close any social trails. It was really just like two. There was some areas where you had parallel trails, and we were trying to restore one, so it got down back to one.
Gotcha. Okay.
But that,
Cool.
I would say, it was a lot harder of an ask because to keep people off of something that's literally a foot to their right.
Mhm.
But the two spots we actually tried to close off, there's really no reason why people should be upset that we closed those two areas off. It's just a matter of can we get the seed to take so it's obvious that they're no longer the intended path that they once were.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I guess I'm gonna circle back one more time for programming wise. I guess, do we want to try and set up a day that is similar to Bike to Work Day, or, you know, near around that time frame that ties into, you know, BMX Day at the park, or, you know, ride your bike around Superior, you know, type of thing, where, you know, I know OSAC has gotten Trails Day, and there's, you know, pretty good turnout, and that seems to be a pretty good turnout every year now at the Colton Trailhead over there. So it's just, you know, is there a time frame that we think that we could probably set up something and try and establish something? Because it's going to take, even if you try and establish something at the bike park, it takes a couple of years to really catch on that, oh, there was some activity here, and now it's happening again this year, and, you know, it'll take a couple of years, but it could gain traction if we're trying to, you know, push the maintenance and programming of the bike park and what it is in that area over there. And maybe it's a bike park, and not to tie into the next one, but disc golf type activities day. We're just throwing out some ideas here, but I'm not sure what day that would be, or, you know, is that June or August, you know, whatever. But it's just something to think about from a programming standpoint. I mean, I think if you got that to be known, and then you do a maintenance day leading up to it, and there's this big, you know, hey, we come out and do disc golf and use the bike track, and we have some maintenance days, you know, 3 weeks, a month beforehand. It kind of leads up to it, and you know, could be an established program. So just a thought. Then you don't have to think about it, and it's every year you do that.
Right, and
Right?
I definitely like the idea of like the community bike rides. I know it's been kind of a rough start this year. I mean, we haven't been able to keep it organized.
I think
but
the next one will be much better, especially because it's no trail maintenance ahead of it.
right.
It's just show up and let's ride the 30.
Well, yeah, I think that if we could even just kind of have one community, even if it was just one community bike ride a year, and make that a regular thing, whether that was always like, you know, like the bike park, I don't know, or if it was it changed every year.
Yeah, I was actually thinking like 1 a quarter might be even a better scenario. Just kind of organize one thing a quarter, because if you do it 1 a year, people are going to be less inclined to do it.
Right.
If you do it more often, then they're like, oh, I missed that last one. I really wanted to do it. Let's try it here.
It's kind of like the movies in the park type of thing. It's once a month, and
Right.
you know, recurring over the summer.
Right.
So, and just a quick reminder, with the budget season coming up, is right now we've been given direction to give each committee $5,000. That you guys would have some level of discretion to spend over. So that could be a completely great use for something like that. And you know, so just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. I know you guys had mentioned OSAC and Trails Day. I think the plan with those budget lines was to provide each committee an opportunity to do some kind of community outreach. So I think that pending that approval, the funds would be available to even, you know, kind of ramp that up a little bit.
I actually wonder if you couldn't almost try to do something like combine one of the HOA movies with a community bike ride. Like you have a ride before the movie, and I don't know.
You know,
And then maybe like everyone who takes part in the bike ride gets a coupon to then get Sweet Cow from the truck, like after they get to the movie or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I was thinking of actually even something a little different, but kind of explore the Superior parks. You have a bike ride to ride to all the different parks in Superior, go from playing, and then maybe there's something, you know,
Fill
small
out the
at each.
letters on the little.
Right, and then at the end
Yeah,
of it,
they
people get
could
Sweet
do the
Cow.
passport.
If you do your
Yeah.
passport on that day and you hit everything at the parks, so that way everybody gets to see all the parks, because a lot of them are hidden in neighborhoods that they didn't even know were there. You get the community bike ride involved, and then you have the Sweet Cow afterwards or something. That's kind of what I was thinking.
The only hurdle there is that is actually quite a few miles.
Yeah.
And it and a fair amount of it would be riding right now on McCaslin's shoulder, because you have to get from original town Sagamore to Rock Creek, and
You split it into 2 parts.
you could split it into 2 parts.
A 2-day.
2 days. It's a stage race.
But no, that is a really good idea. I like the idea, especially if you did combine it with something like the Parks Passport.
Yeah, it's
I
a
know,
great idea.
I know timing wise, it's a little bit tight, but we've ran the bike corral the last 2 years at Chili Fest and have had well over 1,000 bikes. So if we come up with some kind of plan to communicate on the valet tag that we give those guys with their bike number, we can advertise for whatever opportunity you want. Because I think we have a huge cycling community that is pretty untapped. So, and I know that we are working with Sunny this year to sponsor the bike corral at Chili Fest. So just keep that advertising opportunity in mind as you guys are kind of mulling over the timing, because it's a perfect opportunity to get a hold of 1,000 bike riders all at one time.
You know, the other thing that I was thinking of also, which I would like to do in Superior, is kind of have a bike swap, a velo swap type thing, where you take community park and people bring their bikes, and I have an old bike that I don't want, I want to get rid of, and I can sell it cheap. I have a bike that I'm looking for, and then the people who have old bikes who just want to get rid of them, who are willing to donate them, that we can donate them and clean them up and give them away. Kind of a...
You're hired.
I love it.
That's a great idea, particularly when we're going into Christmas, where they can be cleaned up and actually give
to
Christmas gifts.
Like kids and,
Yeah.
I mean, great ideas.
I apologize if I'm out of the loop on this one, but has anybody considered ever doing bike maintenance clinics?
I think Sunny.
Well, Sonny, he wasn't doing clinics. What he was doing on these things is that on the rides, people would show up with their bike, and if there's something was wrong with their bike, he was going to have some tools out there and fix it for them.
But I'm actually
Just an actual
kid
clinic.
level and at adult level to actually have a community event where it's bike maintenance training.
Yeah, I mean,
just take
the,
money in the bill though, to every time we have a problem with it, and pay them, but I'd like to know how
there
to do it actually.
there are, I know that the Louisville Bike Shop does those like once a year or something like that. And one of them I think is usually women specific, but they do like a clinic on bike maintenance, so you can
I think Sonny would be willing
you
to
can
do that.
learn how to, you know,
At least change a tire. or
change a
stuff.
tire,
If you're out riding
yeah.
away from everybody and you get a flat tire, well, how do you change your own tire? If your chain falls off, how do you put it back on? Simple
Right.
stuff. I'm sure Sonny would be willing to do some of that type of stuff. You know, very simple maintenance. You know,
Yeah.
spend an hour on just how do you pull your tire off, how do you put a new tube in, and we could probably arrange some of that.
So just kind of so we capture it, because I mean, I think these are a ton of good ideas. Does this warrant, I mean, we at one point had kind of looked at the working group. I know, Corbett, you and Jacques have kind of headed up the bike piece of it. Do we want to kind of take this offline onto some kind of separate conversations like we've been doing? Because, I mean, I think some of these are absolutely implementable with staff now, and there's some opportunities with the holidays coming up and some advantages that we'd have with our current events, and then maybe figure out what are some items that would be PROSTAC volunteer specific, and kind of talk about who's got the share of the horsepower, what's a PROSTAC, you guys man it, you guys maintain it, which Corey, I think, is where I was hearing from you. And then there's some things that I think inevitably staff would probably participate in.
I guess my thought in this is, since we're kind of already working these trail maintenance bike rides as an independent task type thing, we'll just add some of these things to it, plan it out, and then maybe next year when we're planning out for the year, we'll talk about what worked, what didn't work, what do we want to put on maybe in perpetuity or whatnot.
Yeah.
Awesome ideas.
Yeah, lots of great ideas. I think also maybe having the maintenance session prior to a bike ride would be awesome. Because I have a bike and I'm an amateur at maintaining, and if my back tire goes out, it takes me an hour just to pull that wheel off. So, you know, I'm sure someone knows how to do it faster than me. Yeah.
You guys can go together. We'll tend together.
And then if someone has a flat tire,
No.
and if someone has a flat tire on the bike ride, they'll know how to fix it
I'll throw
from
some
the
tags
maintenance.
out and test it.
You're right.
The staff's also looking, I mean, some of you guys know, we had an Eagle Scout add the maintenance station at Colton Trailhead.
Oh yeah, that thing's
I
love it.
awesome.
We're also
Yeah.
looking at adding a maintenance station along our portion of the 36 trail, our future portion of
And there's one at the top of the hill
BRT.
over
Yeah.
on 36. you know, that lookout
Yeah.
point?
Yep.
They have a really nice one. I see it in use all the time up there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's those are great.
staffed or do you have to do?
Hey, you do it yourself.
No.
It's just got the tools,
It's
right?
got
It's got
wrenches
a-
attached to it,
It's
so
got
yeah.
a pump and some wrenches.
Yeah.
It's like when you go skiing and they'll sometimes have the little bench at the top of the lift for you.
We're also looking, just so you guys know, we're also looking at adding sunscreen dispensers that with some partnership with Boulder County at the Colton Trailhead. I think they've received some grant money to add some sun safety awareness. So just to add in there at that trailhead.
Okay, great. So let's move on to item number 5. Review the status of the disc golf course located at Autry Park and discuss possible improvements or opportunities to relocate the amenity. So, Patrick, if you could recap. I mean, I know you mentioned the $10,000 for that area. Part of that is to mow the grass in the disc golf course, right?
Yep. I think everybody on the group knows the town's got a 9-hole disc golf course along Rock Creek over at Autry Park. When it was approved, it was always approved to be a native unirrigated course with narrow pathways. I think at the time that sounded like a great idea. It was affordable. It's crusher fine tee boxes that were made by the scouts who were great. I think the reality is it works if you're a really great disc golf player and you can keep it really tight in those areas. If you're not,
You lose your ball?
you lose the disc. We were given direction to put beware of rattlesnake signs at the entryway, which is not a friendly thing when you're walking up with your kids to the disc golf course. So we've batted around the idea over the last couple of years, and we're given board direction this year. We're going to add a temporary seasonal 9-hole course at Purple Park that will follow the Women's National Disc Golf Tournament. But what do we want to do with this amenity? I think we've talked about a couple of things over the years. There is the potential to add irrigation over there, which would inevitably improve that course because we could mow it, you could add trees, you could start to treat it like more of a maintained course. We've also talked about relocating the course. I think along staff's opinion along Rock Creek in Community Park, on the backside of Community Park, where there's an established trail, established social trails, it's maintained open space and shade, may be more of a conducive site. We've also talked about adding in Community Park and keeping in Autry Park, and you'd have a full 18-hole course. This popped up on the board's radar last year, and they had asked specifically that it be a work plan item. So I think that there's a heck of an opportunity to do something. I think the board wants us to do something. It's been brought up several times. I think the board typically is in favor of at least hearing a presentation on it. So that's kind of where we're at.
My recollection of the various things on this issue that have come up is Rita Dozell attended the Women's National thing and was very enthusiastic about incorporating something of a permanent nature in Purple Park. The other thing that came up and several times from residents is the inability to utilize Autry for disc golf because it's being used as a doggy toilet over there. And to get it cleaned up from the dog poop and restored to usability by residents. And I don't know if that question has ever been addressed. But just speaking individually here, because this has not been considered, if you have other places that are better or more appropriate for disc golf, you were just talking about bike park. Mm-hmm. Is there an opportunity then to enhance the bike park and make it more of a full-fledged amenity by utilizing some of that space?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's just off the cuff.
Yeah,
Adding to the dog park.
Huh?
Or splitting it and adding to the dog park and the bike park.
That's right.
And to that, we have had that. We have had the request. All right, so backing up just a little bit. After the community engagement process on Coyote Ridge, I did hear from two specific bike advocates that said, is there an opportunity then somewhere else in town to do something more maintained, a small, pump track float? Think of Erie single track for those of you guys have been there, maybe a small version of Valmont. That location was brought up. And then to address, and Sandy's absolutely right, we did have a large, and may still have a large dog waste issue over there. We did install trash cans along the top towards the apartment complex. I mean, it's obvious where that was coming from. It's on the plateau up there by the apartments. We saw people doing it. We wrote a couple of letters to the apartment complex. I'll be honest, I don't know if that helped remedy it. I haven't heard any more complaints about it. So absolutely, there was a dog waste issue. That wasn't helping. I don't think the rattlesnake situation helps. I don't think the lack of shade helps.
Right, that's a big one too, because I'm over there riding my bike in that area, and it's just hot. And if you're going to walk through that for 9 holes with no shade, no trees, no cover, that's going to deter a lot of folks.
Yep. So I think there's an opportunity if PROSTAC's interested in seriously looking at changing or adding an amenity that's low cost, that has some good traction right now. This is a good opportunity for it.
Well, I actually never heard any mention of community park for disc golf, so that's news to me.
Yeah, we had just off of, and I don't want to influence it. That did come from us internally, but you guys, I don't want to dictate that to you guys.
I mean, what I've heard is, now that we've had the competitive disc golf tournament at Purple Park twice in the last few years, that seemed to be so popular that people are like, well, why can't you move the disc golf course over here? But I've also heard the comment of, it's great for a weekend, but it would be way too crowded to make this permanent. And I think the first time when the first tournament was held and this idea kind of got brought up of could you move the disc golf course to Purple Park, I think I kind of liked the idea, but then when I thought about it a little bit more, I'm like, well, but we can't just put amenities on every square inch of space that we have in this town. I mean, Purple Park was built the way it was built for a reason, to have that kind of open, passive space that is, it looks really nice, but also it can be, its use is more open to the user. I mean, it's like you can go out there with your kid and kick a ball around. You could bring a portable volleyball net and set it up and have, a big get together. You could, there's lots of things you can do with that space. But if you put a disc golf course, then you can't do a lot of this stuff anymore. Kind of have the same issue with this idea of a playground at Riverbend Park, but that's another topic. But it's at what point do you say, a change of use for a park or is warranted? And I don't know that Purple Park is really warranted for a change of use. So the idea of actually irrigating the existing disc golf course so it can be, better landscaped and better maintained, I think you would mitigate the rattlesnake problem and the dog poop problem right there, and you would increase the likelihood that it would get used. I mean, just maintaining that space more properly, having it be, maybe it doesn't have to be lush lawn like a Purple Park, but, better than it is. I guess you'd still run into the shade issue unless you start planting trees out there that are given some Red Bull to grow. But that's a problem we face all over town is shade. So that alone doesn't deter me from I think that the disc golf course that is there, I think it was the right idea and it was a poor execution. I think we're living with that kind of poor execution right now. It should have been irrigated and maintained all along, and it wasn't.
Do we happen to know like the popularity or utilization of the disc golf course?
Well,
in other
that-
words, what I'm trying to get at is, do we know what the impact would be of having a disc golf in Purple Park? I mean, would it be a heavy impact, minimal impact?
Well, and so kind of let me clarify. The disc golf at Purple Park will not be a year-round. It won't be a year-round course. It'll be so the sleeve
Temporary.
the temporary. So it'll be an irrigation season course. Peter's absolutely right. People love it and people don't love it, and staff feels very strongly about. You do get wear patterns very quickly with disc golf, and that's something I don't think that staff's recommending. So Purple, think of it as kind of maybe a May to October, and then we will pull those baskets and bring them back out the next year. And due to the Women's National Disc Golf Course, there's 18 holes out there there's 18 sleeves, and the holes can be configured in a couple of different patterns. So that's kind of the current status of what will happen at Purple.
But at Purple, if you have that course in for a few months, you're going to have wear patterns after like a month, right?
Well, we've kind of called around to the jurisdictions. We think that the grass will probably hold up for about a season, and then if we actually put it to bed and then rotate the course the next year, we're thinking that it'll be okay. Next year will actually probably be our first trial year, but that'll give us a good, kind of measuring stick for what we're going to be up against.
But you're still limiting the use of Purple Park, those open areas, like I said.
Yeah.
You're going to restrict
Mhm.
its kind of open usage like it is now, and it's also and in those primary months when people want to use it for the things I said.
Yep.
It's going to be like, well, if someone comes along with it would be like if I went to go throw a frisbee around on an actual golf course, and then all of a sudden someone walks up to the tee box, and it's like, oh, intended purpose here, play golf, you get off the course. I mean, you're going to have some type of resident conflict, I think.
Especially if the pavilion where people are throwing like birthday parties at the pavilion and they set up like a badminton or whatever. It's right in the middle of the course.
So I think another thing, just from a utilization standpoint and what people use, I think a couple of years ago we had the, I don't know what they're called, basket at the 4th of July. And a lot of people came up and talked to us about how they don't use Autry Park because of the under-maintained. And they really wanted to see some utilization and be able to use the course. I mean, I drive 36 and go by the Omni and Interlochen over there, and that course is being used all the time. So I'm sure if we had a course, people would find that course. And if it is in Purple Park, it's on nice green grass, there's lots of trees. I'm sure it would be heavily utilized when people found it, So Autry right now is just not the nicest course because it's very native, natural,
Yeah.
and
So
not as well maintained.
To answer your question, Jacques, I think the number of people that are using it right now is not representative of the number of people that would use it if it were properly maintained.
That makes sense.
Right now, I think it's, it would be like if you had a pool that was green water,
Right.
because it was so dirty. It's not that people don't want to use it; they're being deterred from using it because of the condition of it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I'm open to hearing. I want to know what everyone else thinks of like the idea of moving into community park as well.
Where would that be exactly?
So on the north side of Community Park, so kind of what we would say we call behind the ball fields, you've got the regional Coal Creek Trail. Then you've got kind of the swath of open space in that general kind of location.
You're talking north of the creek.
North of the creek.
Okay.
Yep. So
compression trails.
a recommendation that was brought to us a long time ago that we just didn't really consider at the time was starting hole number 1 over by the Indiana basketball court. And then having something that kind of as much as you can, I mean, we haven't really looked at, is meandering using the existing concrete trail and the social trails in that area.
Would that be going up towards the school and then coming back down around there?
Yep.
So
I think the difference is one of the things you'd have to do is ask all the residents, right?
Yep.
That's
what-
backyards now.
I was going to say it's going
That's
to
what I
be
was gonna say.
some
They
of
have
that.
community trails and
Some of
trekking
that
trails.
might be tight to, you have the potential for a lot of user conflict with the trail, like, discs flying on the trail, into bikes, as well as there's some spaces where, you might be getting right up to fence lines.
Yeah. Very much like some of the conflicts you would run into at Purple.
And did Winnetka Lake not have this exact problem with a disc golf course that was running along the back of homes and a trail around the lake, and they had a bunch of user conflict issues?
In Lafayette?
Yeah, in Lafayette.
Mm-hmm.
I'd have to dig it up, but I remember reading a couple
Yeah, it was.
articles.
Yeah, it was. And I want to
about
say
it.
I don't remember. I think they put it in, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, a lot of the homes nearby, I think, had concerns.
Yeah, it was because it was very tight. Like there, it was like you have only, 10 feet of fairway or whatever to throw and if you go out of that, all of a sudden you're hitting a fence, you're hitting a trail, and I kind of worry that
But I don't know how
this
the
community
dimensions-
park idea might be the same.
But with the temporary nets, you could try it before you buy it, right? I mean, you could put some up and leave it out there for a little bit and see how the, how the community reacts to it, see how the
And that-
interference is before it becomes permanent.
That might be
You
what
have a
they did in
rotating
Lafayette.
course.
They might have done it temporarily to see
Purple
what.
Park 1 month, Community Park the next.
Your backyard, the
Before
next
they
one?
come back to protest.
Yeah,
I mean,
behind Corey's
so-
house.
Yeah.
On,
Coyote Ridge,
Behind
Ridge,
here
bring it
on-
out there. Go
This
ahead.
is incredibly weird that I'm walking
Yeah.
up here
Our
instead of,
liaison doesn't have a
as
seat.
the liaison that I have to do this. But anyway, the only comment I think Corbett hit the nail on the head. Give it a shot, see how it works. This is an incredibly popular sport, and it is played by a lot of people. And unfortunately, I'm going to admit, I have a very strong advocacy for this sport because I represented it on the national and international level for years. It's a great sport, and I think it would be worthwhile to give it a shot. And if it doesn't work in the community, we don't. But we're really missing an opportunity to engage a group of people there are a lot of people who play this sport, and I would like to see us give it a shot.
So, Sandy, can I ask your opinion? What would you say between giving a shot, as in moving it, and giving it a shot, like in a different location, versus the existing location but better maintaining the grounds?
I think Autry Park is a problem because there's no shade. I mean, you don't go out and play disc golf in 10 minutes. It's like any other golf game, and so the fact that there's no shade is a problem. And, I mean, if you try it, we already know we've got the sleeves in the ground at Purple Park. See what kind of response we get from the community. I'm not saying we shouldn't consider Autry, but I hate to think about how much it's going to cost to irrigate that. Patrick would know better than me, but that's a lot of ground to dig up and irrigate. So, give it a shot, see what kind of response you get. Literally, there's a park down in Arvada that I drive past every day, and I don't see the wear patterns, but they probably have specific grass they've installed to do it. But very popular amenity in Arvada that I drive past.
I personally like the idea of doing something temporary behind a community park, just to see how it works. It's a little bit more accessible. It's not kind of out of the way in a corner niche of the city where most people don't go. It's right there along the corridor where a lot of folks go. They see it, they may try it, they may get into it. And I like the idea of community park much better than I like the idea of Purple Park. Purple Park is more open is more conducive to be able to put like a badminton net or something, you know, if you just want temporary, where it's a little tighter area along those sidewalks in the community park, and you can kind of meander and do a try it before you buy it. But again, I think the biggest thing for me is that it's more centrally located for folks to have access it versus going, you know, it's not that much further, but it is, you know, especially in the heat of the day if you're just going to go all the way over to Autry Park.
So I got a couple of thoughts. I guess community park, is that already irrigated and therefore it's really just putting in the sleeves and then maybe mowing the paths? Because you said you'd tie it into existing concrete and crushers that are already out there that you could potentially use it, but that also may cause a little bit more conflict with the runners, bikers, whatever out there, versus if you're cutting across some of that open space. But that's also, you know, more of an impact on some of you're seeing these swaths of cut grass. But I mean, really, the grass potentially will grow back. I mean, if you don't continue to cut it. But I mean, I think it'd be potentially a good idea just to try it for a month. We already know Purple Park is a good opportunity and the sleeves are already there. If Community Park could have that opportunity and work as a permanent space and doesn't have conflict, it may be a good alternative, because I also like the idea of Autry Park, if it's not working, that there is potential to potentially, you know, add to the amenities with the dog park and the bike park there, because that bike park is pretty small, and I use it quite a bit with my kids and stop there, but there's always like, do we have more? Is there more to do? And if we could just expand that a little bit, and using the existing trails out there could do that, but the conflicts with frisbee golf and bike are another thing. So, I mean, it's just, where's the best location for the amenity and how's it work with the other functions that are already there?
I think it's a great idea to try it at Community Park and see how it works, to Sandy's point, since it's basically, I think, an easy thing to test and see what the feedback is.
But I may be confused, but north of the creek in the community park, is there any trees there? Are there trees in north of the creek?
I mean, there's still areas that are going to be quite in the open, like when you're going up towards the school.
Right.
But right along the
Yeah.
creek area is trees.
Okay, right along the creek.
Yeah, and I also think that's just personally a better location than Purple Park, because I agree, Peter, that Purple Park is kind of the scenic, peaceful
You can have a picnic.
Yeah.
picnic.
You're not going to have a picnic at, you know, the community park, but you can have a picnic at Purple Park.
Right,
See
right.
that real
So
quick.
anyway,
Purple Park picnic.
But I guess
Right.
my other question would be is, where's the holes at Purple Park? Because a lot of people use the upper portion of Purple where the
pond.
playground structure is, and right off of where the new pavilion that we put in is next to this sand volleyball. So as you're going down further, there's still more opportunity of just open space that isn't utilized as heavily, and that could be still, you know, where that isn't going to have as much conflict.
yeah, that's true.
So the 9 holes that are gonna go up will be on the 9 holes
Right.
from between Indiana and Pitkin, so away
Right.
from the ponds and the playground.
Right.
But then the flip side of that is then when we rotate that the following year, it would then go to that active half. Mhm.
Well, and if you're trying it out on the lower half, the less active half, I mean, you can also get an understanding of how utilized it is, how much of a wear pattern there is, or if there's still, you know, the grass is holding up and it's not an issue.
But, I mean, what I'm hearing overall is I think there's more interest in trying it at Community Park over trying it at Purple Park.
We received board direction to do it.
Oh,
at
so
Purple
you
Park.
definitely will be doing it.
And everything's set up there.
And
The sleeves
everything's
are
set
you
up
just
there.
have to put it
Okay.
in.
Mhm. Yep.
Where Community Park, you still have to set up the course about where to go and how to get through. But I think, you know, if there's an opportunity to provide it at Community Park as a permanent, you know, we could try it and see if that permanent would take place.
But I'm guessing we wouldn't try it at Community until after you try it at Purple Park? I mean, you're not going to have 2 going at the same time,
Well, you
are
could
you?
have 18 holes, like you said, at that point.
So I think if we were to deviate away from Purple Park, we would probably need to communicate that to the board. We are in a sense, looking at two
Because you'd have
two
the
disc
temporary
golf
purple.
course. You'd have the
and
temporary
Autry.
purple and Autry anyway. So temporary at purple and then something permanent somewhere else is what we're currently
Okay.
kind of mulling over.
So,
But I will say, I think, Peter, to your point, if the committee and the usage up there does not look conducive to Purple Park, then I think removing it from Purple Park is also something that should be communicated if it's a failure. So what I'd hate to do is then have it failed at 2 disc golf courses, because I think we all agree that Autry is just not a functional. It's not a functional disc golf course.
Yeah, I just wanted to go on record as saying I'm not in favor of rehabilitating Autry Park for this purpose. It's just kind of naturally almost too wild for the kind of environment it sounds like what we'd like to have.
Call it
So-
Rattlesnake Park with the
Plus the dog situation over there.
I,
Personal experience.
we do actually, I'm looking at the time, we do actually need to
So,
move on because we need time
One
for
bug I want to put in your head,
the
though,
skate park. But
about maybe dual use for some of these, the nets or that, that they have there, is I would love to see a orienteering meet of some sort in the community, and those poles are the same type that you would use to hold the orienteering flags, and these are, a lot of them are attended by the JRTC in high schools.
Yeah.
So, it'd be something very simple to put on in the community, and if you already have poles there, that they could orienteer from one flag to another flag. Something to think about.
Which
Orienteering.
poles are you talking about?
yeah, you lost me.
That
I'm
hold the
looking for
flags,
poles.
that hold the holes for the golf course.
Oh.
The basket.
okay.
Yeah, the baskets.
Okay.
Okay.
You pull the basket off, you put a flag on it, and it's now dual
Well,
use.
to wrap this up, do we feel strongly enough that we want to recommend that it's tried at Community Park over the board's request to try it at Purple Park? Or do we want to just let them try it at Purple Park, see how it goes?
I'm in favor of that latter.
Okay.
I would just say, I think Purple Park's a great place to try it and see how the usage patterns and everything wear in. But I think that the community park is a great opportunity to relocate a permanent,
Right.
if there's an opportunity to explore what the course layout would be.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to discussion item 6, the standalone pickleball court. I want to spend like 10 minutes on this at most. This. So this is an item that's come up because of resident interest, primarily a resident, correct, Patrick?
Right.
I'll be perfectly honest, I don't see a standalone pickleball court going in anywhere right now by itself. Because where would it go? It's going to have to go in as part of a park or in an existing park somewhere. I just don't see, it's not like we have a piece of property that is like, oh, well, you can just put pickleball courts there and that's it. No, it would have to be part of a larger project, in my mind, and that's just not something we're looking at right now.
Pickleball is about half the size of a tennis court.
Well, the
For
only
a
thing I
single
would
court,
say
so
is,
you put
you
the-
still haven't lined the tennis courts with pickleball lines, have you? That's the only thing I personally, I'm in favor of at this point is maybe lining one of the tennis courts with the pickleball lines. But this standalone court idea, I just don't see it having any traction until we're looking at a larger project.
I'm totally
Totally against
opposite
it.
to that, for 2 reasons. One of them, the tennis courts are totally overused. And second, is if you're playing tennis and someone is playing pickleball, the next court is horrible.
You don't like that
The
thud?
sound of the ball is totally disturbing.
Okay.
Now, another thing is, if I would say that the pickleball thing, we should probably wait and see what we do with the sports tables, because it seems that there is some, I don't know how many courts they have, but they seem to have something in.
Well, they
important
must
there.
have the gymnasium at Impact Sports lined with it, because that's what Louisville has, the indoor rec center I think, has their basketball indoor gymnasium lined with pickleball. And I'm not discounting the popularity of it. I'm just saying I don't see, we'll talk about it and we could say, yes, we need a pickleball court. And then the question is, where does it go? And we have no answer.
Costs a lot of money, I'm sure, to do a standalone.
Well, yeah, you run into that too.
I think we had received a cost estimate when we were looking to make a standalone court as an addition to Wildflower Park with post-tension slab, somewhere around $175,000 with the post-tension fencing, kind of the whole 9 yards.
Why is my recollection that when we talked about doing a standalone tennis court, it was more like 40 or 50,000? Am I totally off on that?
Yeah, I think when we were looking at post-tension slab.
Oh. That's, yeah. That's gonna last in the soils around here.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess, Peter, maybe to clarify, that was in the context of what we were facing at Wildflower.
Right, I was gonna say.
Which had soil, you know, if you remember, we had to sub-X like the whole thing.
Post-tension is, yeah, you're going extreme.
Yeah, which was the recommendation up there.
Because of the soils.
Because of the soils. So, you know, I guess to that point, if we looked at another site, it probably would not, I wouldn't think it would require that much
Would be
concrete.
less.
Yeah, so I guess it'd probably be significantly less unless we ran into the same type of soil issue.
Because you're basically talking like how much is a concrete slab, and even when we put in the shelters and picnic tables, that concrete was still a pretty good amount. And it's like how
5,000
much-
slab.
Yeah, and that was just a little 10 by 10, you know, so you gotta do a pretty good size. And really more than anything for me, it just comes down to, like Peter said, where are you gonna put it, and where's a even opportunity within any of our existing parks that there's a flat concrete slab that would allow for that size.
Without taking out another existing feature. What? Autry?
Mow it down, make it
And
like
I
a little
mean,
loop.
we talked about like basketball courts, where could you put another community little basketball court?
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be very similar to putting in a basketball court somewhere. It's about the same size. I mean, you could almost stripe the basketball court and say you could play it on the basketball court.
Well, but you need a net.
That's like a whole nother,
You
yeah,
put a
you
net
need
up,
the nets
though.
up and the
Well, and
boundaries.
if you guys kind of remember back to the dialogue, that was not an acceptable solution to the group that was asking.
Exactly.
So I think that's where the standalone
And
with
therefore it's-
fencing and the court, I mean, the original recommendation came, I think the presentation was fully loaded, all or nothing.
But I mean, Corbett, you're joking, but if we did end up eventually moving the disc golf course, you do have then a piece of land which says, could you put something else there? But as of right now, I see it as, it's not that, we don't see a need or an interest in pickleball courts. It's a location question that we just can't answer right now.
Totally agree.
So at one point, I know I threw this out. I don't know if it was ever taken seriously or if it's just a plain old boneheaded idea, but those tennis courts at El Dorado K-8 school in the back are decrepit. And so at one point, the question was, could we do a town school district effort to redo those into pickleball courts?
Well, but
there
that's one
issues
of the
with
few
working
things
with-
they are getting in the bond, I think, is they are redoing those tennis courts.
But we did, you and I might be heading to the same spot. We did track that down, but they were not willing to
Right.
allow daytime usage because you're on the school site. So they
Right.
weren't allowed, they didn't want like pickleball court users on the site while the school was open. And we had heard, I thought, from that group that it was kind of a morning
Yeah,
to
like
daytime activity. I think the opportunity for after school probably works, but
Or weekends.
or weekends.
Isn't something better than nothing, or is
This
Well,
group, well,
we do things for the whole town, not just a group, you know, but so.
well, and to that point, and I think to your original point, it's been requested by one person.
And not to make light of that. I mean, it's an item on our amenities priority list. Pickleball courts are on there, so it's just it's not the highest item. So to say a standalone court, it needs to take a piece of land that other higher priority amenities could take. You know, that's a different discussion as well, but. Yeah, I think it's just right now I don't see much, you know, it's not going to get any momentum right now because of location.
We could put it on Richmond 15 right next to the rec center.
Well, like I said, part of a bigger project. That's
Right.
that's
I mean,
where the
it's-
likelihood of this happening is part of a bigger project. So, you know, you have town center parks too, although they're pretty much baked at this point. But that's another potential. Park 3 is potential. Okay, so moving on, we just got today, I guess, right? Yesterday, the initial design concept for the South Pool Skate Park, and we have that to look at.
So while we're bringing that up, the current half pipe, my kids have been enjoying the heck out of that since it's been finished. There's a few things that need to be addressed in there. I don't know if we want to talk to you. I got some pictures to show. There's some areas where the wood wasn't screwed down all the way. Maybe it has been fixed since the pictures were taken, but some areas where the wood wasn't, and it's kind of a hazard for the kids because it forms a lip like this as they're on the bottom part of the half pipe and they're hitting it. So, but just a few things. But other than that, they love the heck out of it.
You know, honestly, I'm not going to comment on the record.
I know what you're going to say. I agree.
Where's the north arrow? The pool is.
Let me kind of back up a little bit.
Were you not copying this?
Or maybe I didn't.
We start with this one.
Oh, there you go. That helps. Thank you. So is the existing in the gray? The kind of middle, approximately?
Whole new site. So,
The existing.
I don't understand your question. So the existing half pipe.
It's approximately what's in that light gray concrete looking
The footprint
area.
that's there right now.
The footprint. Okay.
There's the rock, the walk, the rails probably sitting currently, somewhere right
Yep.
here. That old box was probably right up there. Half pipe. This is the pump station for the irrigation, pool playground. So south pool, baby pool is probably right here.
Mhm.
This part.
So how much bigger is that?
Boy, I don't know that. I'd have to look at the square.
See, there
Looks
is.
like
More
at
than
least
twice, no?
3 times the size.
Yeah.
2.5 maybe.
Looks cool.
And then,
So is that the same thing, just so you can
Yep.
see it better?
So this is actually, I asked them
Description.
to provide a list of the of the features that were in the design, because I mean visually there's some things you couldn't really tell, and they came back with this, which is even better than I really expected them to. So it shows you in the color coding what each thing is. So if you look back at we did the online survey for this, the top 5 items that people wanted were bowl, mini ramp, quarter pipe, and spine, and then the 5th one was half pipe. Doesn't make sense to have the half pipe and the bowl really in my mind, so they kind of serve the same purpose. So really, I mean, this gets all those items and then some. So including the pump track, which I know we asked them to put in on the outside perimeter.
Do you know what the white is?
That's a grass area if you look at the other diagram. I'm guessing that they didn't, they left some of the hill in there.
Yep.
And so the pump track goes like on the back side of the hill, and then the embankment of the concrete goes up the other side, and they leave the raised grass.
Very astute Parks and Rec members, you'll notice 2 very strategically placed irrigation lines on the grassy hillside.
The manhole and the irrigation.
With the covers and the pipes that are already there. We didn't want to add that cost to the project.
But it does look like they do take a fair amount of that knoll out of it. They're digging out a fair amount of it.
So I'm assuming.
If they're going up or down.
That's hardly, you can't tell from a 2D.
Just a quick question. I'm assuming American Ramp Company specializes in building skate parks? Okay, cool. So otherwise I was going to say if not, then maybe it would be worthwhile to get some kids that skate to give us some feedback on what they think of this design.
Well, and we may still try to organize that at another public engagement meeting at some point here in the near future to show the design, to walk it through with users.
It'd
Cool.
be really cool to use like a 3D printer. Get a 3D printer and kind of do a printout of it, and kind of so you can really see where things are.
Yes.
I want to talk to you afterwards. I have actually a 3D printer question. It sounds like maybe you might know it.
Because this looks
Depends
really
on which
cool to
level
me,
it's
but
on.
I don't skate, so I don't know if it's dangerous or awesome.
Awesome is dangerous. Just remember that.
Oh, right. Or maybe it's both, and that's good. I don't
Awesome
know.
is dangerous.
I guess one of the things that when we did talk to them, one of the key things that they were also talking about was linking elements together.
Mhm.
Because right now out there you can do one thing and then you kind of have to stop.
Mhm.
You can't link one thing to another, and that's kind of what the pump track is about going around the outside, as well as the elements. We're supposed to be able to go through an element and continue on to another element, instead of I went down the stairs and now I have to stop because there's not enough room to transition to anything else.
Mhm. Cool.
So that's one of the reasons that they needed a little bit more space and a little bit more movement.
The other nice thing is right now only one person at a time could do something.
Mhm.
One person in the half pipe pretty much at a time. Where with something like this, you can have somebody in the bowl, somebody on the outside, a couple folks doing things at the same time.
Yeah, you could have someone like on the stairs, someone using the spine, someone in the bowl, right? Someone on pump track.
How deep is the bowl?
That's the only thing. It seemed really shallow to me. The one thing said the one half of it was only like a foot deep and the other was like 3 feet deep, right?
Yeah.
So it did seem a little shallow.
That is shallow.
Because
the
what's
one
the
at
depth of the
Lew-
half pipe?
The one at Louisville is 9 feet in the middle. I want to say 12 feet at its deepest.
Is it?
Yeah,
And what
my
would you
kids are
say
scared.
the height of the half pipe is probably what, like between 4 and 5?
4 and 5.
Yeah, that would actually be my only I haven't had a lot of time to look at this. My
Actually-
only comment so far would be it does seem like a little bit of a shallow
Well,
bowl.
The height also determines how much speed you're going to get and how much momentum you can maintain going up the other side, coming back, and going back and forth. It's a function of how high you can get to.
But if I look at that, the existing concrete is at 0, and then you go up another 2 or 3 feet up the stairs, that's why they maintain the ramp as you go down, or to the bottom of the page, and it goes up 5 feet, and then they cut in the bowl in there, right? Because that's a 5 in there.
So you think it's like,
It steps
you think
up
it's
as it goes
negative
down.
3 from 0, so it's actually 8, like 5.
Yeah, because it goes 0 to 5. I think that steps up, and then the bowl drops down from 5.
Okay.
I can't even read
So,
those
so
numbers.
you
I
think
have
it
to
might
run my
actually
checks.
be like 6 and 8 feet deep?
Yeah. Because he's using those contours. Those contours went up, so he's going up the stairs and then up again and then dropping down as digging a hole in the bowl. Or in
And
the-
around where it says minus
So-
3 is 3,
I'll make a note of that.
yeah. However, they
We'll do my
do that.
vision test here.
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Because the stairs, he's up 3 feet on the stairs.
Mm-hmm.
Or 2.
It says 3 and minus 3. No, no.
And it does have that mani pad that the kids asked for.
One kid, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks really cool. It makes me want to go
So-
out there and skate.
So do we know, I mean, it looks like these are trying to utilize the existing contours, adding some stairs. It's really a lot of concrete work, which increases the cost but decreases the maintenance cost for longevity because of, like right now, the half pipe is a bi-yearly maintenance issue that's kind of spendy.
But we also know that they have the potential to do prefab concrete to lower the, actually,
I believe
the
that
prefab concrete does not necessarily lower the cost, but it's more durable. Isn't that what it is?
I think that it
Or does it
lowered-
lower the cost?
My
Oh.
understanding, and maybe we add that in our follow-up questions to Brandon, but I thought it also lowered the cost.
Can you go back one page to the other one too? Because I think that what I'm seeing here, it looks like he's using the existing pad that's out there at a 0 elevation, and then he's doing all the contours off of that existing pad, which also decreases the cost because he's reutilizing the concrete.
We did ask him to try
Right,
as
to
much as
maintain.
possible to use what's out there and existing grade. I think initially kind of ballparking it when we first met, we were like, look, we don't take this over $500,000. Keep it in that 3 range, between 3 and $500,000.
And I think
Right.
that's the one, we didn't get that clearly stated that this design is $300,000.
Yeah, it was kind of vague in his answer.
Like, he said, like, we want to keep it in budget, but we don't know if we're looking at a $500,000 design or a $300,000 design.
Other than, when we met with them on site, and I mean, we started low. So I could do that follow-up, though. They're definitely interested in feedback.
Just in looking at it, it looks like, half of that concrete, not quite half, is the light color is existing.
Yep.
And he's looking at the darker gray, so the whiter is the existing one and the grayish is the new pieces. And then he's putting some, I don't know what that squiggly line is that a rail of some sort? The spline?
It's a spine.
Spine, okay.
And
which,
maybe,
which is raised. But
so maybe that's the follow-up, because they also did discuss with us a prefabricated, like, really heavy,
Concrete.
like, almost like a plastic.
Yeah.
But we had some concerns about the noise. He said it rung out a little bit more, even a little bit louder than the old wood material, the skate light material. So we could follow up on that, because that's when I first saw this. I thought that's what that kind of perimeters, kind of flow around the outside. To me, looked like the black plastic material.
Yeah, for me, it looks like a pretty cool design. It looks like it integrates a lot of the existing site, and even the bowl, not really thinking about it, but he put the bowl on that far east edge, and then actually you could have a drain in the bottom that would tie into it goes into the ravine there on the bottom side. So that way, from a maintenance standpoint and drainage standpoint, you're not like filling it like a pool.
We do have a drain that comes off of the playground there, so yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot
tie
of
those to.
Well, that bowl's got to have some type of drainage built into it.
Even natural drainage to daylight out to the open space there.
You can no longer daylight a pool. You can no longer daylight pool or deck water, but you can. So that's got to go to so those deck drains go internally because of the chemical content in the water, and then there's a drain under the playground. You can actually kind of see where it daylights behind that home. So yeah,
And another thing, just homeowner nearby and everything else, I heard that they're all for it or supportive of the concept and idea.
Yep.
Because I know that's another thing, you know, the impact of how close it is to homes.
So far there's strong resident support of the immediate homes.
Can you just put it back to the color coded?
Sure. Sorry. They're actually a red spine.
Spine.
I'm just trying to figure out where that yellow pole jam is. I don't really see
Yeah, I
yellow
don't see
on
it
the
anywhere.
diagram. It's got to be, I mean, it's probably a little narrow piece somewhere. But yeah, overall, I don't see anything that screams you're missing this, like, you know, features that we've talked about that kids ask for. So does anyone else have any other comments? We'll get some clarity on the depth of the bowl, whether they're using the existing concrete pad or whether it's all new material.
You're holding out on us. You got other.
Any
Oh,
other
I was looking back. These are so
No,
these
those
were
were like early.
These are the prefabs, right? I mean, so these were if you wanted to buy
a piece
and drop it in, which is what's out there now.
I guess a pyramid would, I mean, they have the spine, but there's no pyramid. But that might just eat too much space.
But it really comes into what fits within that between the spine and where the half pipe is sitting today. That's the only but you need transition space. So I don't know how
And
much
actually, you
space
know,
it really fits.
Pyramid actually wasn't huge on the list of, high on the list of popular features.
Is that a 3D?
Oh, you know
rendering?
what? Let's.
Holding out on us again.
There you go. I was looking for 3D rendering.
Looks pretty deep.
Yeah,
It's like I
that,
said, you go up
And you see
go
the
down.
stair step.
that does make it look like it's probably 6 and 8.
Yep.
Peter, there's some rails right there.
Yeah, along the stairs,
Along the-
there's
yeah.
some rails.
Is there another 3D?
Yeah, the other
And then
side.
the banks are I mean, I don't know if they're gonna put coping on those edges or not, but you can slide those as well.
That's all pump track right there.
Yeah, it goes to that
That's the
whole,
pump track
that
all the
whole
way around the edge.
exterior edge. Perimeter.
Look at that.
I want that. Can we do that? I want that.
So, I guess the real question though is, I mean, we have this information. Is there further information on pricing that he's gonna get to us, or where we stand on that? And then at some point, it becomes, how does it move forward, or is there a potential to move it forward?
So we have, I want to say 3 or 350 in the budget now that we're proposing. I think,
Proposing.
yeah.
Okay.
Knowing that this was going to come up, plus the issues that we had with the wooden half pipe and just our inability to keep that thing. I mean, it's $10,000 every couple of years to keep that thing fixed. So we put a placeholder in there, get the comments tonight. You know, this is actually our first glance at it. We got it, like Peter said, we got it today. Take the comments, thumbs it up, thumbs it down, changes, we get the pricing, and we start to go from there. And then I would, with all the committees in general, advocate with the board during the budget process for things that you want to see.
I think this would be a great amenity to have. Looks really cool. I think it would get good use.
Is there any way you could email this to me?
I got it.
I'll forward it.
If you have it.
I'll forward it to.
Yeah, just throw draft on there.
Right.
Just so we've had that in the past where then before you know, people are assuming we've committed to
You're gonna
it.
do that, right.
Yeah, so just
Right.
throw draft on there, concept on it, or something along those lines.
All right, so anyone else have any questions for us to take back to American Ramp Company?
What is the this timeline for something like that?
Construction wise, well, I don't know. Corey would probably be better to. It seemed like these guys. It was turnkey. Seems like this is about the only thing they do. That and pump tracks for bikes. So, but I don't know that we asked on that on the timeline.
But I would imagine it's got to be just a few weeks,
To do that, that's going to be a couple months.
a couple months.
To build that, yeah.
Yeah. So
Really?
The concrete.
yeah.
I
by
mean,
the time
just
you
because you got
Because
to
of
tear
the
into the
site prep
ground
and
and do the
everything.
site prep and
Yeah.
move utilities and things like that
Yeah.
around. Trust me, you think it's flat work, but it takes a lot longer. And just getting all the pieces on site and getting it constructed and cleaned up. I mean, how long did it take to redo the? Oh, we won't go there. At least
Yeah.
2 months.
and two contractor. Oh, the existing
The
one.
half pipe itself. I mean,
6 months, and two contractors.
I mean, basically, it was all summer.
Also,
But I mean,
yeah.
you think about that, and you think about the parking lot at Eldorado K8, and that was a few months, 3 months. I mean, that's a
But
lot
they
smaller,
weren't-
but it's more intricate, and yeah.
Were they
2-3 months.
working on that consistently for 3 months, or were they like doing something coming back to it?
I'd still say 2 to 3 months.
Mm.
I mean, I'm sure you could fit it in less than that if you really pushed, but rough.
I mean,
But I'm guessing if it gets approved in the budget, we would probably try to have them do it like March through May, so it's
As soon
open
as they
for
could.
summer.
Yeah.
I guess that's the other thing. As a next step is, I mean, the site costs. So I don't think their number is going to factor in moving utilities.
But actually, you think about it, I mean, they're only doing around the perimeter. He's cutting into the bank. It's really that mound up on the top and forming that, and any utilities up on that top mound.
The only concern we
I
initially
mean-
had that would need some exploring is, I mean, that's a major pump station right there for the reuse system, is finding out, where
the
that
lines are.
goes.
I mean, I think, did Matt pull all that stuff and send it to him?
Irrigation. I mean, that reuse line's got to be deep enough, but yeah, so maybe some site stuff, but
I thought Matt was gonna pull all that stuff from Public Works and give it to American Ramp Company so that they would take it into consideration, but.
well, and I think that's why they're leaving the grass berm over there.
Right.
So
So that might be the only major thing to
Yeah.
work around, then everything else is probably just irrigation.
I don't think there's a lot over there.
Yeah. If it's just irrigation.
Did he keep that? He kept that big 3D concrete rail, didn't he?
I don't think so.
Right here.
Yeah.
No. It's not in the 3D, I don't think.
No, I closed them.
I think they put a whole new,
He
I think
modified
we
it
asked him
slightly.
to
Bank
remove
there.
it because of we weren't interested in having the kids continue to hit the rail and then come down in the parking lot.
Right, yeah.
Because I know that's a huge conflict point.
Right, with flying skateboards.
Yeah.
all right. So if there's no more questions, we'll try to wrap up here. For the updates and look ahead, I do want to just kind of jump forward to the status update for it actually says 2017, it should say 2018 proposed town budget. Last month, we had made our recommendation for budget requests, and in that we had said that in 2018 we wanted to put in the budget request the Pirate Park embankment slide if it was not approved for this year. And for anyone that watched the discussion on Monday night, it wasn't approved for this year. And I would say the general consensus is it probably would not be approved if it were in the budget next year. So I'm wondering if we should not just have staff pull that out of as a budget request and just leave in there the skate park and the rec center kind of study, the work for the ballot, the 100,000 for the ballot question. So I just want to see what everyone else thought about that. I mean, has anyone watched it yet?
I'm not.
So the I don't know how best to, the discussion at the board meeting went a lot longer than I expected. To be perfectly honest, I wasn't actually that surprised that it didn't get approved. The reasons why it didn't get approved did surprise me. And one of the main ones was a resident, I guess that's a doctor, ER doctor from the sounds of it, wrote into the board and said that they had like high concerns over rattlesnake bites of children. And the board seemed to thoroughly agree with that. So that's one of the reasons why I think if it goes forward again, I think they're going to have the same concern. There was also some concerns of whether an amenity like this shouldn't be in a more popular park, like a bigger park. You know, like the idea that this could be like a really cool amenity and it might draw too much traffic to this little pocket park and it would be, you know, better placed somewhere else. But then also there were some general concerns over, you know, it kind of is too much money to be putting into a little park, especially when you bring in the concern raised by another resident of there's no playground in Riverbend Park. So they would sooner want to see money spent on a playground in Riverbend Park than they would want to see money spent on improving these little existing pocket parks. So the combination of all those things seem like we would have a extremely unlikely success in getting it approved for next year's. I think we're better off just focusing on the items we feel are highest priority, which at this point are rec center and skate park.
The vote at the meeting was 2-5, and the two people who voted for were Chris Hansen and myself. And I think Peter has captured it pretty well, and even though I don't want to discourage you, I really honestly believe you have very little chance of getting this through. So I would recommend that you, as a trustee, that it'll be a hard battle for you to get it to go through. So you may want to make sure your efforts stay on the thing you think you might have a better chance at.
So I don't know that we need to make a revised recommendation or motion. I think we could, if we just have a general consensus, we could just ask staff to pull that from our request. I mean, if anyone disagrees with that, speak up, but that would be my my thought.
So I'm going to talk out of both sides of my face here, which I never do. I appreciate the input, but if this is something that we feel strongly about, then we should still, you know, feel strongly about it, whether we think it's going to happen or not. If that's something that we absolutely, you know, that's the squeaky wheels, like, no, we need this, we need this, we need this. I personally am in favor of it, but am I strongly in favor of it to say that, no, we need to go fight that battle? I personally am not. But I just don't want folks to be influenced just because they don't think that it's a winning battle. Well, if something that you feel really passionate that we need to have, then you should still feel passionate about it. You know, just kind of out of both sides. So I'm in favor of pulling it because I'm not that passionate about it. It'd be really nice, a fun amenity, but I do get, you know, why are you spending that much money in a corner, you know, a small part of the community where it's like the furthest remote south, you know, piece of the community that versus other areas. So I do get that.
I mean, I gotta say, I was frustrated in so many different ways leaving that meeting, but one of them was the board members really seemed to like the amenity. They just didn't like where it was going.
Well, and this was one of the amenities we also talked about at Wildflower Park, and it just didn't make
That
it
was discussed.
because it was pulled away from the houses and. where the-
Well, also
Well,
that didn't have the natural
was-
slope.
Right,
and
it wasn't as steep.
Yeah.
Is there, so instead of pulling it, is there maybe do we investigate a better location, more centralized location? If it's something that they're in favor of, that has less rattlesnakes and more community availability, or?
I mean, Purple Park has a hillside. It has a runoff into a pond, though that's more of a concern, I think, for sleds than a dry slide. I don't know.
Riverbend has that one, that people.
I was going to
slide
say Riverbend has a slope too. Riverbend was discussed last night because it was brought up by a resident as not having a playground, which is something that, I mean, those of you who have been around long enough know we've discussed within PROSTAC before.
I guess for me, I'm like, I think it's a great amenity, and it'd be great if we could find a space for it and work it in with other site work, because I think that's the most expensive part of this piece. And I was telling Peter last Monday night that the one thing I was surprised about the most when we saw those final drawings again was the actual, I was always thinking it covered more of the hillside, and it was actually shortened because of the ADA accessibility,
ADA and site prep,
the
yeah.
site prep and everything else around it. The slide itself is fairly inexpensive compared to the site work around that piece.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I think if we can find a place that works well to integrate that in, that already maybe has some of those other components taken care of, it would bring the price down and make it a viable option at somewhere else. But from an overall priority list, I think, rec center is high on the priority list. I think that's one that we have a lot of traction with, that we should continue to focus our efforts on. I think the skate park, from, what I hear in the community and what some of the kids are doing these days, is a high priority. And just for maintenance and renovation, I'm hoping that we could find something that's durable, that we don't have to renovate or maintain as much. But, so for me, I'm good taking it off the list, but I think it's something we should keep on our amenities list if we can find a place for it.
I wonder actually, could we not just put embankment slide as a standalone amenity on the amenities priorities list next year, and just kind of have it as, find a place for it.
Find a place.
Not have a location tied to it, just have it as an amenity going forward. Because, like I said, I think the board members overall seem to really like the amenity itself. Obviously, within PROSTAC, we like the amenity. We need to find a different location.
Well, and even like Parks 1 and 2 had the terraced, transition down to the water, and there's play areas, and maybe there's a way to work that into the final development of those parks.
At one point, actually, wasn't there a small embankment slide in the playground on Park 2?
I believe that it's actually still there in the native kind of play area.
Right.
Yep.
But I think that was small. It probably is even smaller than the 14-foot slide that was proposed for Pirate Park. But yeah, the idea, it got kicked around at Wildflower. It was at one point, if it still is, in a town center design, and then we talked about it for Pirate Park. So, okay.
Yeah, my opinion on this is that, if this grew out of that $30,000 fund, that we were going to exceed it, and we said, oh, we heard from the board that maybe we could exceed it, so we kept doing this because we already had the drawings on it. But it was really almost OBE now by the skate park, because the community actually has spoken louder, I think, about the skate park than this embankment. I still like it. I still think we have the information. I still like keeping it as an amenity list. But if I was going to focus on one or the other, the community has spoken more strongly on the skate park that I would definitely pursue over this, but not lose it.
Okay. So moving on to the rest of the.
So are we making a,
I don't think we.
do we need to make a motion to
I don't
pull
think
it
we
from the
need to
budget request
make
or
a
no?
motion. We can just make a request of staff to pull it.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so other updates. Chili Fest is September 9th at Community Park. It runs from 2 to 6. We'll have a booth, I assume, shared with the other committees again. It would really be nice if we could get a standalone booth like CAPS got. Didn't they have a standalone booth at Pancake Breakfast?
CAPS wasn't at the 4th of July.
I thought they were.
No, that was the, well, yeah, well. Anyway.
All right, anyway.
I think all advisory committees minus Historic Commission, I think, are planning to attend.
Okay. And I'm sure we still have sunglasses to give out.
Lots.
So they were extremely popular at the Pancake Breakfast. But as far as, topics of discussion, I think it would actually be really good to have some color printouts of the skate park design. So
With the word draft on it.
what's that?
Draft.
With the word draft.
With the word draft on it, right. So that could be a good interaction point. And then we'll have to wait and see if about Rec Center, if we should continue talking about that in a public forum yet, or.
I was going to say also, I saw that we had an updated trails was in the publication. The
Sitting.
I think it was in the
Chamber?
I don't know. It was one of the magazines I got the other day. It has a nice fold out that showed actually even
the chamber. The
was it
Chamber of Commerce.
I can't remember which one it was.
That was the Superior Chamber of Commerce.
But it had a nice fold out that showed even town center and all the parks were labeled and the bike paths, and it was a really good kind of comprehensive document. There's some differences in the two maps that were in there, but we won't get into that. Most people won't notice.
I didn't look at it in detail. All right. So those of you who can attend, for as much or as little amount of time as you can, 2 to 6 on September 9th.
But I was going to say, can we have a print of that map? Do we need to do something to get a bigger print?
Which,
And if we're
the
sharing-
chamber map?
Yeah, more of a just parks and trails map. There's so many different versions, that's why maybe I can just talk to you.
Oh, for the Chili Fest.
Yeah, for Chili
Okay,
Fest.
yeah.
So our standard go-to is the map that is
this
in
one?
the,
That's the trails
so not the
map.
passport map. The passport map that we use for the passport program is the most accurate.
Okay.
So we can do that.
Whichever one,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
always a good draw for people to talk about and point at different amenities within the town.
I thought and I don't remember which committee it came from. Was there a discussion at the joint leadership
have.
meeting that you guys would have a map that was like agreed upon or
Probably did.
something along those lines? We'll do
We
some
probably
follow-up.
did.
Yeah, I don't know.
I can't remember which one it was. I just remember that we wanted to have one so that it's a
Yeah,
point of
there'll be a
discussion.
map there, absolutely.
Between that and this, I think.
So I think it
it's
must have
not
come from
just-
Ken.
we should have a map probably at any event.
Yep.
But I think at this point, we really want to be talking about skate park and rec center more than trails.
Okay,
You know.
we'll make sure of it.
But also just where parks are, and if people want to talk about amenities and where things are, and it's like, well, where is this
Yeah.
located and how's it impacting and proximity? It's just good to have a map. People
Okay.
understand maps.
Patrick, what's the track dates project update?
Last one.
We're gonna meet and we'll get plant material on Friday. Plant material on Friday. We'll go to the nurseries and check it out. Planning to install and plants hopefully early September. So it's moving along. The trail's been staked out. 8-inch irrigation reuse line is in the ground. 4-inch laterals with irrigation heads are starting to go in the ground. We'll do electrical and charge up the line.
Was there an outlet on the east end of that trail?
No.
So it's just a trail to nowhere? I was
Correct.
out there on my bike the other day and looking around going,
Correct.
where does it tie in?
Yep.
Well, because there's no FTPs for that
Yep.
section of town center.
I know, but I'm just, people are gonna take that trail and get out to the end and go.
Yep.
And they're gonna start putting natural community trails through somebody's backyard that's not gonna be happy about it, but just throwing it out there.
I mean, there's also no trail connections into
Anywhere out
the
there.
Rock Creek neighborhood, and that was a conscious decision.
That was just yeah. That was
They're
a.
going to get social trails now
Yeah.
because
Right.
there's no.
It was discussed
winning
quite a bit at that
neighbor
board
trail.
meeting.
Yeah.
So it's.
I just, you see it develop and people ask you questions, and so I just wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
Nope.
Now, it's not on here, but we haven't had an update in a while on the Dr. Cog Trail. Where's that stand?
I'll have to defer to Public Works and get some info. I don't know if I think they're maybe getting close to putting it out to bid, but we'll follow up.
One last one. So tract H, majority of it's still open space type native grasses and things with some planting and trees within the space.
Correct.
All right. Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right, that's funny. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. That's funny. Also, they say the way I say water, sometimes people call it. Yeah. See you.
One, I've never seen switches don't control this center